빛난 정신 이어가도다. 오대양 육대조 천주까지도 억만세 태평성대 길이 빛내세 평화천일구 순정의 기쁨이 땅 천년한 날에 영생의 이상향을 나타내도다. 오대양 육대조 천주까지도 억만세 태평성대 길이 빛내세 통일천일구 사계절 휘날리는 천일국 깃발 천진 참부모님 소망하도다. 오대양 육대조 천주까지도 억만세 태평성대 길이 빛내세 행복천일구.
Please join me in prayer. Our Heavenly Parents and True Parents, good evening. We are now on our first class within this year, Father in Heaven, and I do hope that we could, during our the lecture and discussion, we could focus our mind and heart, Father in Heaven, to understand, Father in Heaven, your words and the words of our parents. Allow us to fulfill our responsibility once again, Father in Heaven, during this time. Even though some of us are busy, I do hope that we could give our time and effort, Father in Heaven, very short time, Father in Heaven, attending to you and to our two parents, Father. So we would like to ask you to be with us, Father in Heaven, for tonight, and give us inspiration, Father in Heaven, enlighten us more about the words, Father in Heaven, and the words of our true parents, and His Father in Heaven, so that we could be able to share more to our brothers and sisters and help them, Father in Heaven, to aspire them, Father in Heaven, especially their life of faith and understanding your heart, Father. Thank you so much for unending love, and I would like to offer and forth this prayer in our name, heaven and earth. Chu,
Jew.
evening, everybody. So first, first day of the first year, the 21st, then right.
2021. Welcome to 2021.
Maraming salamat po.
Model lecture, wala pa si Julius.
Sige, ituloy muna natin panoorin yun, yung video. Anyway, just to set the background, because since last night, I've been monitoring yung sex education implementation ng United Nations. And in the Philippines, there is already a mandate from DepEd that it will be implemented. And this is the background of that sex education program na inano ng United Nations, yung nasa video na papanoorin natin. Okay, so I hope na you can feel the urgency of time from it, because ito yung sinasabi ni Father nung bago siya mamatay, na if we cannot really fulfill our responsibility to educate young people towards a better understanding of the original sexual orientation that we have, this will really come. Okay, so while waiting, let's watch and continue to watch the video.
I believe countries have got a right to protect themselves, to protect their citizens from these influences that are not of Africa, that are not of
Kami nakita, sir.
I was shocked to realize
Alright.
that some months ago in Pakistan, the US ambassador there announced the gay party, a party for all local homosexuals. I felt that that was an affront to the Pakistani people. And I just wondered how insensitive could one get, Isn't that just a total disregard of the culture of a people?
In 2011, the UN Special Rapporteur on the Right to Education issued a report to the UN. This report claimed that children have a right to comprehensive sexuality education that, among other things, will abolish guilt feelings about eroticism, include homosexual education, and make students aware of their sexual rights, such as the right to sexual pleasure.
It's about starting when we're with children about the expectation of roles, and we need to start there.
My brother Luigi and I had an opportunity to go to the United Nations and give a speech on the UN floor. First, my brother explained about how we became orphans when both of our parents died of AIDS. We were able to go in closed United Nations negotiations where we saw developed countries trying to force the African countries to accept comprehensive sexuality education. This kind of education tells youth they can have fun and have sex and just use condom. This kind of message was a death sentence to not only both of my parents but also my brother Rogerio.
I went to the United Nations with my brother and sister. It was called the high-level meetings on AIDS. So much talking when all they had to say was, don't have sex outside of marriage. That would save hours and hours and hours of work.
Then it was my turn to speak. I told them how Planned Parenthood was passing out a booklet for HIV positive youth at the United Nations called Healthy, Happy, and Hot. Can you imagine? This is for the kids who have AIDS. The booklet says its purpose, and I quote, to support your sexual pleasure. It tells youth they can have sex in different ways. It teaches about sexual pleasure through masturbation, with same-sex partners, and even if you are drunk.
The first time I came to the United Nations was around 1999. And I remember very clearly I had made some speeches at the United Nations, and I had no idea that when I was calling for comprehensive sexuality education, that it was about pushing the sexual rights movement.
In his speech to the International AIDS Conference in August of 2008, UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon called for the decriminalization and destigmatization of homosexual sex. However, there is no evidence that destigmatizing or decriminalizing the sexual behavior of high-risk groups decreases HIV/AIDS rates.
My brother Luigi was also invited to speak at the UN about AIDS orphan, but then he found out that the African group was being pressured to endorse a document pushed by UNAIDS called Guidelines on HIV/AIDS and Human Rights. Do you know what the guidelines say we have to do to stop AIDS? They say you have to legalize same-sex marriage and graphic sexuality education for kids and legalize prostitution. My brother showed the delegates what the guidelines really say, and they've removed it this time. But the rich countries keep pushing to endorse this in other documents.
UNAIDS published and circulated an email which was false and malicious about me because they felt that they needed to have in the document language relating to men who have sex with men and sex workers. As a result of the pressure that UNAIDS put to bear in this email, CARICOM's negotiating position was changed, and I was advised that my contract would not be renewed.
They actually said that for us to combat HIV and AIDS, we needed to legalize prostitution, legalize homosexuality.
It is an affront to the principles of the UN Charter. A UN agency should not be allowed to overstep its bounds in such a manner.
We are so arrogant, we Western technical experts. So here's this great model in Uganda. The Western experts show up, they know what's best affecting gay men and drug users, and they go to Africa, maybe with no experience in Africa, and tell them what to do, and they don't listen, and they don't notice what's going on around them.
Because there is a great divide between the developed countries and the developing nations. Many of us are still not even food secure, you know? We can barely feed ourselves. The poverty rate is sky high. You tell me how funding to educate people on men having sex with men, you know, or the lesbian agenda is going to be beneficial to my people. It's not.
Uganda has received international acclaim for its fight against HIV/AIDS, and the fact that this came from the highest political level through our president, His Excellency Yoweri Museveni.
Our approach is gradual. Abstinence, be faithful to each other, but if you can't, use the condom.
We had to fight to defeat AIDS, or it would defeat us. My husband believes in our culture so much, and our culture really used to always promote abstinence from premarital sex. Uganda is our family, and we had to spread that message to everybody. It is ABC.
When Uganda launched their ABC program, they had no way of knowing that they were no longer fighting HIV only, but also the ideology behind Western AIDS prevention.
Uganda is now very concerned that its success is being eroded by criticism leveled against it, that it's not laying enough emphasis on the use of condoms and should actually reduce its message on abstinence and being faithful to one's partner.
It could be said that the small African country of Botswana represents one ideology in the AIDS policy struggle, and that Uganda represents the other. In 1990, Botswana had a prevalence rate of only 3%. In 1992, it rose to 10%, and in 2011, it reached an alarming 24%, the highest in the world next to Swaziland. In 2015, more infants are expected to die of AIDS in Botswana than are born in Boston and Philadelphia combined. Let's compare Botswana and Uganda. In 1990, Uganda had one of the highest HIV infection rates in the world, with a rate of 15%. Then, in 2006, Uganda's infection rate took a dramatic drop to only 5%, one of the largest reductions of new infections ever recorded.
The way it worked in Uganda was probably just about right. You had President Museveni going around from town to town with a bullhorn, literally telling people, you've got to change your behavior or you're all going to die. And if you're really going to do something stupid anyway, at least use a condom. That's probably about the right message in a place like Uganda or South Africa or Botswana, where a large proportion of the potential partners you're going to run across are HIV infected. That is the truth, and that is what you ought to be telling people.
Infection rates are going up in the U.S. They're going down in Kenya. They seem to be going down in Ethiopia now. They went down in a major way in Uganda. They went down and stayed very low in Senegal, and yet we're going to these countries and telling them how to prevent AIDS.
People say we have poverty and we have women not having choices in their lives. And then there's this huge disconnect, and therefore we have to go with condoms. What sense does that make? These women who have no choices and no power, do they think they're going to get their husbands to use condoms with them regularly?
Today, a condom isn't something that a woman can, in most situations, negotiate. And so we have to look for prevention tools.
Condom use in steady partnerships is not even in the double digits anywhere in the world among heterosexuals. Anywhere in the world.
I could see where he was going, but a part of me could not stop. It felt so good to be loved. And he asked for sex. And I thought, I don't give in, I'm going to lose this guy.
The good news about condoms is that they are an effective product. The bad news is they're not 100% effective.
They had to take a blood test. It was the worst experience I ever went through. I was shaking all through. I said, God, if I have AIDS, I'm finished. And I came so close to the fact that I could be HIV positive. I just lost a friend, 21 years old. I saw her in the last stages. She had full-blown AIDS. It was so scary, so scary.
Who among us has not heard somebody say that you can only get HIV from unsafe sex? Well, that's a statement that condoms are 100% effective, which just clearly isn't true.
The way we do AIDS prevention, which can be called risk reduction only, you're reducing the risk but not avoiding or eliminating the risk.
If you're a young person in South Africa, even if you're using condoms consistently, if you're in a situation where a third of the potential partners you're running into are positive, even with 90% protection, there's a substantial chance that after several years you're going to get infected anyway.
Which countries in Africa have the most condoms and use the most condoms? Botswana, South Africa, Zimbabwe. Those countries stand out. And they don't have lower infection rates, they have higher infection rates. We put that data into a table that shows as condoms become more available, instead of infection rates going down, they actually rise.
The use of condoms is what we believe is the cause for the slight increase that we have seen in the infection of AIDS, HIV. And this is because it lets our population believe they can let their guard down and they can actually behave in risky behavior because of the belief that these condoms can actually prevent AIDS 100%, and that is not true.
I'm in no way opposed to promoting condoms as part of a strategy for AIDS prevention. The problem with condoms is if we let that give us the illusion
can actually prevent
that we can forget about the A and the B. If you're a young person in South Africa and you've got the message drummed into you that AIDS prevention equals condoms, you think you're protected, and therefore you don't examine your underlying behavior and stop to question whether having multiple partners in the middle of an AIDS epidemic is totally insane or not. You know, you can use the analogy of seatbelts and drunk driving. It's not a bad idea for them to wear seatbelts. The problem comes in when you have the illusion that as long as you wear seatbelts, it's okay to keep driving drunk.
Meu pai ficou doente quando nós estávamos em 10 de agosto, por muito tempo.
Sentia-se mal quando nós víamos ele doente. Pensávamos, quando ele morrer, vamos ficar com quem? Quem vai nos sustentar? Sempre andávamos tristes.
Mais tarde ele acabou por perder a vida. Quando ele perdeu a vida também ficamos desesperados. Porque
ficamos por 3 meses na casa sem teto.
Eu brincava com meus amigos. Às vezes meus amigos, quando eram chamados com a sua mãe, ele respondia mãe. E eu não tinha mãe para poder responder. Então eu ficava assim um pouco mais triste por não ter mãe. Não tinha ninguém para poder chamar mãe.
Right now, nearly 40 million people are living with HIV. the annual cost of getting treatment to everyone in the world who is HIV positive will be more than $13 billion a year, every year. Moreover, these figures assume no increase in the total number of people who will need treatment. Yet we're averaging over 4 million new infections a year. In other words, for each new person who got treatment for HIV, about 10 people became infected.
If we don't increase our investments in prevention, how can the world afford, from a humane perspective, from a moral perspective, from a financial and economic perspective, that every year between 4 and 5 million people will become infected?
The cost of promoting the ABC program the way Uganda did it in the early years, when they broke the back of what was then the world's worst epidemic and turned that epidemic around, it was less than 50 cents per person per year. Not only is there this sort of general indictment that we have violated trust and betrayed the people of the third world and everything by letting our ideology get in the way, but we have pushed Uganda away from the model that's worked so well. If you go to Uganda today, the emphasis is on drugs, it's on condoms, testing. The old ABC program that put real emphasis on A and B, that involved the church, went into the schools, it's been largely dismantled.
People accuse the religious right of being willing to let millions of Africans die for their beliefs. Well, unfortunately, in a sense, some people on the left are willing to let millions of Africans die because they don't want to say anything that sounds like they're interfering with their sexual freedom.
Uganda has also recently come under heavy attack and criticism about its policies on homosexuality, and I think a lot of it is based on misunderstanding. Coming from a country where we have seen our loved ones die from HIV/AIDS, seen the suffering, the toll that such illness bears, not just on the affected individual, but the family, the society, our whole economy is suffering. And it is our deepest belief that we owe it to our fellow Ugandans to put the right policies in place. And homosexuality erodes the very, very fabric of our society in the sense that it puts our people at risk.
Dr. Rand Stoneburner, he worked for the World Health Organization and he was all immersed in the Uganda data. But Stoneburner said that history will look back on this period and say one of the great abuses of the latter part of the 20th century is a failure to do AIDS prevention in ways we know are effective.
If we learn anything from Uganda, then what these nations look like in the future will be decided by the choices their young people make today.
But I'm not a virgin anymore. What's the point? I could just go on. After all, I've lost it. I got to know about secondary virginity. I say I may have lost the first, but I can keep myself from now till marriage.
Young people decide, and many have against premarital sex, and they know that abstinence works. And they're proud to speak about it these days because they know that their lives are different.
I was tempted, I tried it out. It wasn't what I thought it was. I wanted more and more to get what I thought I wanted. But I realized the greatest sex comes when someone really loves you. And if someone loves you, then they want to be committed to you. And that is only in marriage.
I am definitely not going to have sex outside marriage. Because first of all, I don't want to die early, and I don't want my wife to die early either. She's probably going to be really pretty, and she's going to be the mother of my kids.
Not everyone is having sex, I realized. That's the thing, that everyone is doing it, but that's not true. And I'm not everyone, and you're not everyone. We could stand out of the crowd.
I would tell the rich governments to stop pushing sex in Africa. And I would tell the African governments to not listen to them and to stand strong, because no amount of money is worth it.
It's a voice that whispers my name. It's a kiss without any shame. Something beautiful, yeah, yeah. Like
Please act now and go to standforfamily.org and sign the petition to stop cultural imperialism. Let's unite with people across the world and stop the abuses exposed in this film.
Nakamute ka, sir.
Ayan. So, thank you for watching. And I hope that from the video you have learned something that would open up our mind. Don't you know that True Father invested a lot in Uganda, especially in terms of age education? And he was the one who influenced Musliveni regarding the ABC.
Oh, that's why.
And when Uganda used the pure love education that father had given, that's the time that it went down. Okay, so yun, no? Kaya nga, ma-remember ko yung sinabi ni father na if we cannot really challenge the young people of today to really comprehend to the original sexual orientation, will be facing a lot of difficulty, most especially if this will be set up into the human rights, United Nations human rights. Okay, once you will criticize LGBT or even sex workers, you will be penalized and you will be imprisoned. Okay. So anyway, the reason why I presented that is because the other day when I heard a news, I read a news from the from my news bulletin that I always followed up.
You have made
Within this year, they are now implementing the human United Nations sex education to become part of the curriculum of the Department of Education. So this is what we are facing right now. This is what we are. This is where we are heading, and this is what United Nations is pushing us. That's the reason why True Mother is keep on how do you call that? Telling to the whole world that we have to really practice yung mutual prosperity, universally shared values, and ano yung isa? Ano yung pangatlo?
Interdependence po.
Yeah, interdependence, mutual prosperity, and universally shared values. Because each region, we have different cultures that we needed to respect instead of influencing them to change based on what other rich countries wanted to. Pero kung titignan natin yan kasi yung ginagawa ng United Nations. Okay. Kaya nga, di ba kinikriticize natin bakit humiwalay si Duterte sa Amerika. It's not because I'm pro Duterte or anti ano, but that's the reason why Duterte started to disconnect to the influence of the United Nations, because he don't want that United Nations will interfere, most especially to what is going on in the Philippines. Okay. Pero sana hindi siya assassinate, because that is what had happened when Marcos started to disunite with the Americans. Okay. Kaya EDSA revolution is a well-organized strategy to stop the plan of Marcos to separate from America during that time. Anyway, gaya nga ng sinabi ko, I hope na from from that video you can learn something that will push us to urgently act and influence our young people. Okay, so Aju, that's how important our role is. Not as a lecturer, but as an educator of the truth. Because I truly believe that we are not just lecturer, but most especially we are educator of God's principle. Okay, so the next part would be the model lecture. Erwin?
Yes, for the lecture of chapter 2, part of the divine principle. Ay, ayan. Process on Jesus in the providence of restoration, section 1, 2, and 3. So, I would like to welcome Julius to give the lecture. Let's give a round of applause.
Parang nabigla si Kuya Julius, ha?
Ito pala. Oh, I cannot move. Hello, good evening, everyone. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
First day of the year, 2021. So
Happy
good
New Year,
start,
Kuya.
no?
It's a coffee
New Year,
mate. I
everyone.
like coffee. May coffee second, tignan mo.
Okay, so this evening, I was tasked to give chapter 2 of the part 2 of the divine principle, which is Moses and Jesus in the providence of restoration. So in chapter 1, we learn about the providence of restoration in Adam's family, Noah's family, and Abraham's family. And from there, we can learn that God's predestination of his will is absolute, but the fulfillment of his will is conditional because it requires human portion of responsibility. And God has absolute respect for human portion of responsibility in which he does not interfere and only regard based on the result, uh, which is uh, in accordance with, of course, God's words. So um, we can see the determination of God, you know. So when the central figure failed to fulfill his responsibility, he did not hesitate to abandon them and replace with a new one. For example, in uh, Adam's family, so when Cain killed Abel, so God replaced him with Seth. So from Seth's descendants came Noah, and when Noah's family also did not fulfill their responsibilities, so although regretful, God abandoned Noah and replaced him with Abraham. So now let's continue. So Moses and Jesus in the providence of restoration. So the Bible here contains many secrets of God's work of salvation. So it is because most important parts of the Bible is composed of parables, symbols, and metaphors. But it is written in Amos chapter 3, verse 7, that surely the Lord God does nothing without revealing his secret to his servants, the prophets. But without knowing the principle behind God's providence, so we'll be unable to discern those mysteries concealed in the Bible. So that's why God set up providential courses of Jacob and Moses as models for Jesus' course to save humankind. So, section 1, the model courses for bringing Satan to submission. So, model course for subjugating Satan. So, we know Jacob's entire course to bring Satan to submission became the model course for Moses and Jesus. So Jesus came to bring Satan to submission in substantial course. And Moses' course, or walk a course that was in image of Jesus' course. And still earlier, God had Jacob walk a course that was a symbolic course or representation of Jesus' course. So these model courses showed the way for the Israelites and all of humanity how to bring Satan to complete submission. So the question is why Jacob's course and Moses' course were set up as models for Jesus' course. It is because the goal of the providence of restoration is only attained when human beings bring Satan to voluntary submission and become his master. So how you would do that? So they must do this by fulfilling their portion of responsibility. So Jesus as the Messiah and the true human ancestor is it is because he will come as a true parent. No? So he is our true human ancestors. Pioneered the way or the course to bring Satan to complete submission and has since guided people of faith to follow his example. So we know that Satan does not meekly surrender even before God. So would by no means also to surrender with Jesus. So therefore God called upon Jacob and Moses and worked through them to show the course for bringing Satan to submission. Section 2, the providence of restoration under the leadership of Moses. So overview of the providence led by Moses. So the providence of restoration led by Moses was built upon the foundation for the Messiah laid in Abraham's family. But because of the foundation that was laid by Satan on the bigger scope, so it was here, okay, that Abraham's family have nevertheless required by himself to lay the foundation for the Messiah through indemnity, the foundation of faith, and the foundation of substance. So it is because whenever the central figure changes, the new central figure cannot inherit the will without first completing a similar responsibility of his own. So another thing also The scope has expanded from the family foundation to a national level. So after the conclusion of the 400-year period of the Israelites' slavery in Egypt, Moses was the central figure to restore the foundation of faith. But Moses was different from all the previous central figures. Is that first, he represented or was God. Second, he was to prefigure Jesus. That's why, as we learned earlier, it is because Moses walked a course that is in the image of Jesus' course. So Moses stood on the foundation of these three successful symbolic offerings, led by Abel, Noah, and Isaac. So the age of providence to lay the foundation for restoration, when sacrifices had been offered in laying the foundation of faith, had come to a close. So now we are entering the age of the providence of restoration. So when people could receive the words of God directly. So this is the time now in Moses' time. So yung there was no longer need of symbolic offering in this time. So Moses could restore the foundation of faith by merely obedience to God's words because of that, while fulfilling the dispensation of 40 for the separation of Satan. So the question here is, what is the meaning of 40? Hello? Di ko alam yan. Ano nga ba?
Separation from Satan.
Earlier, I think we have that kind of explanation. So, ano nga ba? Well, what's the meaning of 40? Si Ate Sylvia.
Separation from Satan po.
Yes. So, according to our earlier lesson, so this is the characteristic of dispensation for the separation of Satan. It is because the goal of restoration is to restore the four-position foundation. And God worked through the 10 generations of Adam to Noah in setting up an indemnity condition to restore the number 4. So 10 generations times 40 times 10. So it became 40. So that's why 40 became the characteristic dispensation for the separation of Satan. Okay. So upon entering the age of providence of restoration, God worked to lay this one, the national foundation of substance. So since Moses stood as God to the people, represented Jesus, he stood in the position as parent to the Israelites when laying the national foundation of faith. But concurrently, Moses was the prophet with a mission to prepare the way for Jesus. So hence he stood in the position of a child to Jesus, who was to come as the true parent. So therefore, with respect to the Israelites, so in relation to the Israelites, Moses stood in the position of Abel as the central figure for the national foundation of substance. So once Moses had secured the position of Abel, the Israelites standing in the position of Cain were supposed to fulfill the national indemnity condition to remove the fallen nature through obedience to Moses. So by doing so, they would establish the national foundation of substance. So just by uniting, having this faith and obedience with Moses, uniting with Moses, so they could establish this national foundation of substance in this scope. So here, national course to restore Canaan under the leadership of Moses compared. So in Moses' course, Moses brought the Israelites out of Egypt, which represents the satanic world, with miracles and signs, and led them across the Red Sea. And had them wander through the wilderness before entering Canaan. So in Jesus' course, this foreshadowed also, it is because, as what I've said, Moses walked a course that was in image of Jesus' course. So this foreshadowed course in which Jesus would one day lead Christians, the second Israel, out of simply across the troubled sea. And he would take them through sea of evil, the desert, void of life-giving water, before guiding them into the Garden of Eden. And both courses were prolonged 3 times because of the failure of the Israelites. So the first national course to restore Canaan. So in order for Moses to become the central figure to restore the foundation of faith and be qualified to lead the Israelites out of Egypt, he had to complete a dispensation of 40 for the separation of Satan. So central figure here is Moses. So condition God's words indemnity period 40 days. So to achieve this purpose, Moses was brought into the Pharaoh's palace. So that's the purpose, which is the satanic world, and spent 40 years to complete the dispensation of 40 for the separation of Satan under God's words. So through this, he restored the foundation of faith. So through that, 40 years he spent in Pharaoh's palace. So he restored the foundation of faith. And because of the faithlessness of the Israelites, the foundation of substance again was shattered. And the first national course to restore Canaan failed. So it is because of the faithlessness of the Israelites. So this first national course to restore Canaan failed. So when the first national course to restore Canaan ended in failure, so Satan claimed the 40 years of Moses' life in Pharaoh's palace. Hence, for Moses to begin the second national course to restore Canaan, he had to lay anew another 40 years, the foundation of faith, by completing another 40 years to restore through indemnity the lost 40 years. So Moses went through a second dispensation of 40 for the separation of Satan. During the 40 years he spent in the wilderness of Midian. So there he restored the foundation of faith needed to start or embark upon the second national course to restore Canaan. So once Moses restored the foundation of faith in the wilderness of Midian, he also secured the position of evil. So in relation to the Israelites, which is Cain, in fulfilling the national indemnity condition to remove the fallen nature. So God worked the dispensation to start the first national course to restore Canaan when Moses struck and killed an Egyptian. Similarly, to work the dispensation to start the national course to restore Canaan, God granted Moses 3 signs and 10 plagues, with which to prevail over the Egyptians. So in the second national course to restore Canaan, the Israelites believed and followed Moses, hence they could embark upon the second national course to restore Canaan. So they have to remain faithful and obedient to Moses throughout their journey until they had traversed the wilderness with unwavering faith in Moses and entered the land of Canaan. The national foundation of substance would be established. So if they have this unwavering faith in Moses, they can enter Canaan on the national foundation of substance. So in the first course to restore Canaan, if the Israelites had followed Moses, they would have been led along the direct route by way of the land of the Philistines and would have entered Canaan in 21 days. So here, if the Israelites had followed Moses, then they could take this route directly, just in 21 days. So, however, because of this faithlessness, no, that was a failure. So, in the second course, so God did not lead the people along that direct road. It is because he was worried that when they encountered the warlike Philistines, they might again turn faithless and return to Egypt. So instead, God led them here across the Red Sea through the wilderness in a long detour. So God planned to bring them into Canaan here after 21 months. So at the beginning of journey, at the beginning of third month, they arrived here in the wilderness of Sinai. So in Mount Sinai, when Moses, uh, after his fasting, no, he received instructions from God, no, concerning the Ark of Tabernacle, the two tablets of stones, okay, and the tabernacle. So the providence of restoration and the tabernacle and the significance and purpose of the tablets of stone, the tabernacle, and the ark of the covenant. So these two tablets of stone, okay, inscribed with the word, symbolize restored Adam and Eve, and also symbolize Jesus and his would-be bride. So the tabernacle was the representation of Jesus in symbol. And this Ark of the Covenant represented the cosmos, and at the same time was a smaller representation of the tabernacle. So the question is, for what purpose did God give the tablets of stone, the tabernacle, and the Ark of the Covenant? It is because the Israelites repeatedly turned faithless during their journey. So in the end, there was danger that even Moses might act faithlessly. So that's why, to cope with this situation, God set up an object of faith. So one which would remain unchanged, even though people might change or people might turn faithless. So that's why God set up this one, because he also worried that even Moses might also act faithlessly. The foundation for the tabernacle, first and second foundations for the tabernacle. So when the 40-day fast was over, Moses received the two tablets of stone inscribed with the Ten Commandments. But when Moses saw the faithlessness of the people, his anger burned hot, and he broke the tablets of stone. And as a result, the first foundation for the tabernacle failed because of that. So for the second foundation, Moses fasted again for 40 days, a second time, after which God dictated 10 commandments to Moses, and he wrote them on the tablets. So Moses took these tablets and went before the Israelites again. And this time, they honored him. So in obedience, they built this tabernacle and started Ark of Covenant and the tabernacle, and started their course again. So, but the Israelites lost faith again and failed to maintain the second foundation for the tabernacle, and it was invaded by Satan. So the providence to restore this foundation again was prolonged to a third attempt, because again the Israelites lost again faith. So the third foundation for the tabernacle, the 40-day mission to spy out the land of Canaan, was given as the condition to restore through indemnity the foundation for the tabernacle in their third attempt. So when the 12 spies returned from that mission, all of them except the two gave faithful reports, Joshua and Caleb. So upon hearing this, the Israelites again murmured against Moses. And as a result of their lack of faith, the third foundation for the tabernacle ended in failure. So the same thing, no? Because of this faithlessness of the Israelites, again, the third foundation for the tabernacle also ended in failure. So due to the Israelites' faithlessness, the foundation for the tabernacle was invaded by Satan 3 times. Therefore, the national indemnity condition to remove the fallen nature was not fulfilled, and the foundation of substance for the second national course to restore Canaan was not laid. Consequently, the entire national or second national course to restore Canaan ended in failure. So God's providence was prolonged to a third national course. So the 21-month second wilderness course was prolonged into 40-year third wilderness course. So because of that, it was prolonged to this 40-year third wilderness course. So here, third national course to restore Canaan, foundation of faith. So as a result of the failure of the mission to spy out the land, the people had to wander in the wilderness for 40 years. So 1 year for each day of the 40-day spy mission until the return to Kadesh Barnea. So for Moses, this 40-year period was to separate from Satan. So who had invaded the previous foundation of faith and to restore through indemnity the foundation of faith for the third course. So Moses honored the tabernacle with faith and loyalty throughout the entire 40 years of wandering in the wilderness. By the time he returned to Kadesh Barnea, he had completed the foundation of faith for the third national course to restore Canaan. So accordingly, he restored or secured the position of Abel in relation to the Israelites for the foundation of substance. So after that, so we go here to the foundation of substance centered on Moses. So in order to conduct the dispensation to start based on the rock, God instructed Moses to strike the rock with his staff, that it might yield water and give drink to the people. However, when people or Moses heard the people murmuring and complaining against him, he raged in uncontrolled anger and struck the rock twice. So when he struck the rock the second time, it represented the possibility that Jesus might be struck. In other words, his act set up the condition that when Jesus came, if the Jewish people were turned to faithlessness, Satan would have grounds to confront Jesus, the fulfillment of the law. Thus, Moses' act constituted a sin. So here, why did it constitute a sin to strike the rock twice? So in 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 4, the rock is a symbol for Jesus Christ. So since Christ came as the tree of life, the rock may also be seen as the tree of life. So the tree of life is also a symbol for perfected Adam in the Garden of Eden. That is in 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verse 45. Hence, the rock symbolized Adam in perfection. So striking the rock once represented the restoration of Adam. However, striking it for the second time representing the killing of Adam. So the rock not only symbolized Christ, as the root of the tablets of stone, it is also symbolized God, the origin of Christ. The tablets of stone could be refashioned and restored based on the internal foundation of the water from the rock. However, since the rock symbolized not only Jesus, but also God, his origins, his striking the rock the second time could not be undone. Since the rock symbolized Jesus, striking the rock twice became the remote cause of Jesus' crucifixion. So we know that the rock is a symbol for Jesus Christ. So it is also symbolized Adam in perfection. So striking it once, so as God commanded, represented restoration of Adam. But because of his uncontrolled anger, uh, when he heard the murmuring of and complaint of the Israelites, so he struck it the second time, which represented also killing Adam. That's why striking the rock twice constituted a sin. Foundation of substance centered on Moses. So because of his actions, Moses undermined the dispensation to start based on the rock. So as a consequence or result, he was not permitted to enter the promised land. So God elevated Joshua to Moses' position. So then Joshua sent two men to spy out Jericho, the fortified city. So when they returned from Jericho, the two spies made a faithful report saying, all the inhabitants of the land are faint-hearted because of us. So the younger generation or these younger Israelites raised in the wilderness all believed the spies first. And this faith enabled them to start the third course. So after observing the phase of Passover, they set out for Jericho. After marching around the fortified for 7 days, they raised a great shout under Joshua's command, and the city walls tumbled down. Then they entered Canaan and defeated 31 kings all together. So this younger generation of Israelites that was raised in the wilderness have start have this faithful belief in Joshua and be able enable them to start the third course. And they entered Canaan and altogether defeated 31 kings. So based on this victory, they laid the foundation of substance in the national level, third national course, and established the national foundation for the Messiah. However, fallen people had already founded powerful nations such as Egypt, led by satanic rulers opposing God's providence of restoration. Therefore, it would be necessary to build a heavenly sovereign kingdom before the Messiah could come. So, the fallen people had already founded powerful nations such as Egypt. So uh, this could be not the, they could make, therefore it would be necessary to build a heavenly sovereign kingdom before the Messiah could come. And again, this younger generation of Israelites who entered Canaan also became faithless. So God's providence was prolonged again and would suffer repeated setbacks in the time of Jesus. So some lessons from Moses' course. So first, even by studying the providence centered on Moses alone, we cannot but come to the conclusion that God exists and has been going or guiding human history toward the realization of one absolute purpose. So second, God does not intervene in human portion of responsibility, while he predetermines absolutely that his will be fulfilled. Third, the greater one's mission, the greater test one will face. So fourth, with the fall as a condition, Satan bound human beings in a relationship with him. Consequently, God does not grant grace to people without a necessary condition. For if he were to do so, Satan would make accusations. Therefore, when God is about to give a grace, he puts the person through a test, either before or after the grace, to prevent Satan's accusation. So here we can understand that God, why we have these trials, or before God will give a test. No, it is to prevent Satan's accusation. So here in section 3, the providence of restoration under the leadership of Jesus. So Jesus came to totally bring Satan to submission and establish the kingdom of heaven. So Jacob walked the symbolic course to bring Satan to submission, while Moses walked the image. So forced the way for Jesus to walk. So taking the worldwide course to subjugate Satan, restore Canaan, Jesus followed the model demonstrational course to Canaan in to subjugate Satan. So first worldwide course to restore Canaan. In the first worldwide course to restore Canaan, the central figure instructed with the mission to restore the foundation of faith was John the Baptist. So Moses had learned of his brethren and the tradition of his fathers while living in the Pharaoh's palace. Likewise, John the Baptist learned the way of faith and obedience to heaven while living in the wilderness. So in this way, John the Baptist successfully established the dispensation of 40 for the separation of Satan and was able to lay the foundation of faith for the first worldwide course to restore Canaan. Foundation of substance. So since John the Baptist stood in the same position as Moses, he likewise stood in the dual positions of parent and child. From the position of parent, he restored through indemnity the foundation of faith. From the position of a child to Jesus as the true parent, he secured the position of Abel for the fulfillment of the indemnity condition to remove the fallen nature. So God conducted the dispensation to start by encouraging the Jewish people to believe in John through the miracles surrounding his life. Since the Jewish people believed and followed John the Baptist, they could start the worldwide course to restore Canaan. John the Baptist harbored doubts toward Jesus. He had testified, even though he had testified to him, and he denied that he was Elijah, even though he is, in fact, came to fulfill Elijah's mission. This not only blocked the Jewish people's path to Jesus, it even led them to oppose Jesus. So that's why we learned that the principal reason why Jesus had to die on the cross, it is because of the failure of John the Baptist. So had John the Baptist testified to the Jewish people that Jesus is the Messiah, then the Israelites would have flocked to Jesus. But Jesus, John the Baptist harbored the doubts. No, even he testified that Jesus Christ is the Son of Man. So that uh, leads the Israelites to oppose Jesus Christ. And ultimately, that's the principal reason why Jesus had to die on the cross. So through this, John left the Abel's position and failed to complete the foundation of substance or the foundation for the Messiah. So consequently, the first worldwide course to restore Canaan was aborted, as was the case in Moses' days. Again, it was prolonged to a second and then a third course. Second worldwide course to restore Canaan, foundation of faith. So the foundation of faith which John had laid for the first course was invaded by Satan. So Jesus himself now had to take on John's mission and restore through indemnity the foundation of faith in order to set out on the second worldwide course to restore Canaan. So when Jesus fasted for 40 days and had three temptations in the wilderness, it was to separate Satan for the very purpose of restoring the foundation of faith. Because he was in such a situation, Jesus enjoined Peter not to reveal the Jewish people that he was the Messiah. So the purpose of Satan's three temptations is that Jesus came to fulfill the purpose of creation by restoring the three great blessings. Because humanity failed to fulfill them due to the fall, Satan therefore attempted to prevent Jesus from fulfilling the purpose of creation through the three temptations. So the first temptation, after Jesus completed the 40-day fast in the wilderness, Satan appeared before him and tempted him, saying, "If you are the Son of God, command these stones to become loaves of bread." That is in Matthew chapter 4, verse 3. And Jesus' answer to this temptation was, "Man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceeds from the mouth of God." In Matthew chapter 4, verse 4. Here Jesus meant that although he was starving, he was less concerned about obtaining bread, which could keep his body alive, than he was with becoming the incarnate Word of God, who could nourish every spirit with life. Second temptation. Next, Satan brought Jesus to the pinnacle of the temple and challenged him, saying, "If you are the Son of God, throw yourself down." In Matthew chapter 4, verse 6. At that moment, Jesus answered him, "You shall not tempt the Lord your God." Matthew chapter 4, verse 7. Jesus' response meant that Satan should not test God by tempting Jesus, the incarnation of God, who works his providence in strict accordance with the principle. Third temptation. Finally, Satan took Jesus to a very high mountain and showed him all things under heaven and all their glory, saying, "All this I will give you if you fall down and worship me." Matthew chapter 4, verse 9. Jesus replied, "You shall worship the Lord your God, and him only shall you serve." Matthew chapter 4, verse 10. Here Jesus indicated that according to the principle, even a fallen angel like Satan should worship God. By the same token, he should honor and attend Jesus, who came as the body of the Creator. So Jesus was the fulfillment of the three manifestations of grace and the Ten Commandments. Therefore, God conducted the dispensation to start the second worldwide course to restore Canaan based on Jesus' own words and miraculous deeds. If the Jewish people uh, representing Cain had been moved to believe in and follow Jesus, they would have restored the foundation of substance. So it is because of the disbelief of the people, no? The foundation of substance again have failed. So due to the faithlessness of such people that sent Jesus to the cross, he could lay neither the foundation of substance nor the foundation for the Messiah. So the second worldwide course thus ended in tragic failure. So after this one, spiritual foundation of faith. So after Jesus gave up his body on the cross, he resumed John the Baptist mission spiritually during the 40-day period from his resurrection to his ascension. Jesus triumphed over Satan and broke all his chains. By doing so, Jesus restored the foundation of faith for the spiritual course in the third worldwide course to restore Canaan. So the resurrected Jesus was the spiritual fulfillment of the tablets, ark, and the tabernacle. He gathered his scattered disciples and worked this dispensation to start by giving them the power to perform signs and miracles. The faithful believers stood in the position of Cain. By believing in Jesus and following him devotedly, they fulfilled the indemnity condition to remove the fallen nature and restored uh, the spiritual foundation of substance. So, so he gathered his scattered disciples and start this dispensation for the realization of the foundation of substance. So by believing in Jesus and following him devotedly, they fulfilled that condition or indemnity condition. Spiritual foundation for the Messiah. The disciples laid the spiritual foundation of substance and the spiritual foundation for the Messiah. So upon this foundation, Jesus ascended from the position of the spiritual mission bearer for John the Baptist to the position of spiritual Messiah and sent the Holy Spirit. So thereupon, Jesus and the Holy Spirit became the spiritual true parents and began the work of giving the birth. So it is because they have restored the foundation of faith and the foundation of substance on the spiritual level. So Jesus as the spiritual Messiah and the Holy Spirit now could begin the work of giving spiritual rebirth. So ever since the descent of the Holy Spirit at the Pentecost in Acts chapter 2 verses 1 to 4, the resurrected Jesus as the spiritual true Father and the Holy Spirit as the spiritual true Mother have worked in oneness to grant spiritual rebirth by spiritually engrafting believers with themselves. So this is the work of spiritual salvation. Canaan was restored only spiritually. So therefore, by believing in and serving the resurrected Jesus, who stands upon the spiritual foundation for the Messiah, Christians can accomplish the restoration of spiritual Canaan and enter its realm of grace. On the other hand, the physical bodies of Christians stand in the same position as Jesus' body, which was assaulted by Satan. So through the crucifixion, hence Christians are still stained with the original sin, and thus they still must walk the course for the separation of Satan to prepare for the second coming of Christ. So Canaan was only restored spiritually, so you have to prepare for, in substantial terms, separation of Satan in the second coming of Christ. The course to restore substantial Canaan under the leadership of Christ at the second coming. So while Jesus has been restoring Canaan as a worldwide spiritual realm, Christ at the second advent is to complete the third worldwide course as a substantial course and build the actual kingdom of heaven on earth. So it can be realized by the second coming of Christ, the substantial kingdom of heaven on earth, by giving rebirth. Okay. So Jesus must be born in the flesh on earth. So he will not die without fulfilling the providence of restoration. This is because God's providence, which began with Adam, the first Adam, was prolonged to through Jesus, the second Adam, and will be successful on the third attempt, which is the third Adam. So moreover, God's spiritual foundation of restoration during the 2,000 years since Jesus had prepared a democratic society and legal environment which will protect Christ at the second advent. So God prepared also the environment. So this democratic society which could protect Christ at the second advent. So the relationship of kinship between God and human beings. So the ultimate purpose of God's providence of restoration is to transform fallen people into children born of God's direct lineage. So because Noah had demonstrated utmost devotion, his family could stand in an indirect relationship with God as servant of servants. That, that is in Genesis chapter 9, verse 25. And in Abraham's family and their descendants, as God chosen people, were elevated to the position of a servant. Also in TV, chapter 25, verse 55. So in the days of Jesus, the disciples were elevated to the position of adopted children in Romans chapter 8, verse 23. The Christ will return and restore all humanity to be God's children of direct lineage on the second advent. So human beings fell, but God could not forsake them. So they had to go down to the position of the servant of servants. Then what does it mean to be a servant of servants? It means having no master. Fallen people must be loyal to God first from such a position. So Satan was the archangel and a servant of God. As human beings have been dragged along by a servant. If they are to return to God, they must establish the condition of utmost loyalty to God in the position of a servant of servants. So the meaning of servant of servants from here, meaning having no master. So fallen people must be loyal to God first from such a position of a servant of servants. So the returning Christ will conduct the dispensation to start based on the word and then complete the foundation for the Messiah, both spiritually and physically. Upon that foundation, he will engraft all humanity with himself, cleansing them of the original sin and restoring them to be God's children born of his lineage. So that's why Christ will return here on earth, no, to bring about this spiritual and physical rebirth that would bring all humanity to be engrafted to him, and from that cleansing them of this original sin and restoring them to be God's children born of his lineage. It is because only the Messiah could bring about the removal or the liquidation of our sins. So that could start also the transformation from our fallen lineage into God's lineage. So the returning Christ will begin by laying, firstly, both spiritually and physically, this family foundation for the Messiah. Then he will then expand its scope to a clan, society, nation, world, and the cosmos. So when this foundation is secure, he will finally be able to realize the kingdom of heaven substantially here on earth. So some lessons from Jesus' course. So first, God predestines absolutely that his will be accomplished. So when John the Baptist failed his mission, Jesus tried to accomplish God's will at any cost, even to the extent of taking John, John's responsibility. So we know that God's predestination of his will is absolute. And Jesus understood this. That's why, to the extent that he takes on John's responsibility in order to fulfill or realize the mission of John. And second, God's predestination concerning the manner in which his will is to be accomplished through an individual or a nation is conditional, not absolute. It is because the fulfillment of God's will, okay, requires human portion of responsibility. So third, God does not interfere with a person's effort to fulfill his portion of responsibility, but treats him according to the result of his actions. So God has regard only based on the result of their work, which are based on the words of God. So fourth, the greater a person's mission, the greater the test he will confront. So it is because he will be dealing based on his level of mission. Example, on the worldwide level. So he will be dealing with this magnitude of mission on the worldwide scale. Okay, thank you. That's all I can share.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
Congratulations.
Yes, my goal is 1 hour. So 1 hour, less than 1 hour.
Let's give a hand. Thank you, Kuya. Let's give a round of applause, brothers and sisters. So, okay, so yun yung chapter 2 ng Providence about Moses and Jesus and Jacob, Moses. So,
Mahaba nga eh.
mahaba talaga siya. I know it's really hard. Kasi,
Basa-basa ko na nga lang.
actually, first time yun sa narinig ko. Kasi even Sir Richard and other lecturers, even just Moses' lecture takes an hour. And sa'yo kasi, ginumpan na lang. Yeah, that's the power of UPTA. We can squeeze the lecture. All right, so yeah, the leadership of Jesus, the leadership of Moses. Are there any questions? Wala nang question. Kung wala nang question, let us proceed sa sa lecture ni Adiji. Dual characteristics, continuation. Last lecture. Then next meeting is yung section 2 na tayo. Hey, Jinky, are you there? All right. So it's better if you could start. Then question and answer portion na tayo ngayon. Q&A. Let's welcome Ate Jinky. So,
Good evening, everyone. Yeah, today we're talking about the principle of creation, di ba? Right.
yes, the dual
So,
of God.
yeah,
Dual character.
chapter 1, yeah, the principle of creation. Of course, we are talking about, yeah, after the introduction, now we are going to talk about the chapter 1, the principle of creation. So it says the questions of life and the universe. Yeah. Throughout history, people have anguished over for the over the fundamental questions of human life and the universe without arriving in satisfying answers. Of course, human beings are trying to solve or looking for the answer, the fundamental problems of life actually. So yeah, within the universe. But of course, even though us, yeah, but no one knew the principle. Yeah, but for us, of course, we already know about divine principle, which is even though yeah, we're still on the process, yeah, of uh, fulfilling our by which we are all things yeah created. So this are we going to talk about later on about yeah we're going to talk about the origin of God. Okay. God, yeah, God as the creator, yeah, of the world and the first cause and the nature of God. And so, root of principle. This is because no one has understood the root of principles by which humanity and the universe were originally created. So approach this topic properly. It is not enough to examine resultant reality. The fundamental question is that of the causal reality. Problems concerning human life and the universe cannot be solved without first understanding the nature of God. So in section 1, and section, hindi ko kasi makita. Wait lang po. I cannot see. Yeah, and the section 1, the dual characteristic of God and the created. Sorry, hindi ko siya makita. And created universe. So the dual characteristic of God. How can we know the divine nature of invisible God? Of course, one way to fathom his deity is by observing the universe when he created. So this is in the Bible, verse in the Roman chapter 1, verse 20. Everything in the created universe is substantial and manifestation of some quality of Creator's invisible and divine nature. Just as we can come to know the character of an artist through his work, so we can understand the nature of God by observing the diverse elements of creation. So as God created the human being, of course, is the final creation of God, which is the human being. So that's how he really loved us. So the character of an artist, para ano lang siya, when God created the universe, the human beings in the at last, of course, he feels satisfied. So that he also, yeah, para ano lang, when someone is making a music, parang ganun. How we can really satisfied kapag yung final ano na, gagawin niya. So, Hindi ko talaga siya makita. Tama. Sorry. So let us begin by pointing out the common elements which are found universally throughout the natural world. So every entity possesses dual characteristic of yang and yin, which yang plus and the yin is the minus, and in calm negative comes existence only when these characteristics have the form reciprocal relationship both within the entity and between its and other entities. So how yeah, of course, um, as God, yeah, was created the human beings so that we could have the um, reciprocal relationship to God, and yeah, which is that how we could, as God created everything, to exist, to have the reciprocal relationship, yeah, to Him, which is that is called the dual characteristic that can that God that like for us to relate like plus and minus. So let us example actually in the for instance atom displays either as a positive or a negative balance plants propagate by means of stamen and pistil, and animals multiply and maintain their species through the relationship between males and females. Finally, human beings are comprised of a man and a woman. So as God created kite animals, God created everything with like plus minus, and even though in the plants there's yeah, in animals there's also male and female. Within plants, stamen and pistil like that. And yeah, in and proton like that. Within the union, we can make a life possible to see possible, like possible. However, there is another fundamental pair of dual characteristic in reciprocal relationship for entity possesses both an outer form and an inner quality. So every entity, yeah, we have the our inner quality and outer form, and yeah, how we could really possess both this outer form and our inner quality. So which is our inner quality is our internal nature, and outer form is an external form, which is if they could both unite, this is a dual characteristic. The visible outer form resembles the invisible inner quality. The inner quality is called internal nature, and the outer form or shape is called the external form. Since the internal nature and external form refer to the corresponding inner and outer aspect of the same entity, the external form may also be understood as a second internal nature. Therefore, the internal nature and external form together constitute dual characteristic. So as we have our uh, yeah, internal nature and external form, this is how we could the internal character, which is the invisible visible resembled our visible internal form, and in fact our external form takes after the internal character. It is that's why with the interaction internal character makes visible together. That's why we call this the dual characteristic. Let us take human beings an example. So yeah, as human beings have a human being is composed of an outer form, the body, and an inner quality, the mind. And the mind is an internal nature, and the body is external form. The mind and body are two correlative aspects of human beings. Hence, the body may be understood as a second mind. Together, they constitute the dual characteristic of a human being. Similarly, all being exists through the reciprocal relationship between their dual characteristic of internal nature and external form. Yes, we have our as human beings, we have our mind. So our internal nature, which is our body, is external form. So these are God. Um, yeah, this is how God really created. So let us know what is the first. The first cause must also possess the dual characteristic of internal nature and external form, which stand in the position of subject partner and to the external nature and external form of all beings. We call this first cause of the universe, and we call God internal nature and external form the original internal nature and original external form. So, the first cause of all existence, and as God who possessed for the God possessed the original internal origin, which is the external form. So as the parang ano, plus and minus. Yeah, so it exhibit between, of course, the universal law. Yeah, the universal law. And through this, it is resemble of the attributes of God. Yeah. It is only natural to summarize that God, the first cause of all things, and also exists based on the reciprocal relationship between his dual characteristic of yang and yin. As God is the origin of this, as God is the origin of being composed of harmony between this original, our original essential, essential character, and and our original essential form between our essential, original essential form, the original essential form, and between the original essential form of like masculinity and our femininity. So with this, we call this as dual characteristic. The principle talks about dual characteristic. Why are dual characteristics necessary? Without them, harmony within creation is unattainable. Giving and receiving is possible only through the dual characteristic. One side is like a bone and the other like flesh. New forms arise to their reciprocity. Since God is a dual characteristic itself, the word as his object partner must come into being. Dual characteristics, therefore, are needed to achieve to the beauty of creation. That's how God really created the human being, so that how we could really give intake to people are the farther at the level of image. Yet God is omnipresent. Do you feel God within your life? God appears to a place where there is stimulus. Father told Father once told us, hit your leg as hard as possible with your hand. It must hurt. It is the evidence that your mind exists everywhere inside your body. As our mind appears where there is stimulus, God also appears where there is a stimulus. If we do not look for God through prayers, his faithful conditions or calling, he will not respond and will have the connections, whatever with us. That is why we must always pray with the heart and wide awake. Yeah, if like parang yeah, as example here that Father like told, if you really hit your hit your legs, of course you will feel bad. So how like our let us recall our inner our inner this is a, so parang 'di ba pag na-feel mo yun, after may isip mong masakit siya. So that's how the inner and outer um, uh, and as said, God, if we do not look for God through prayers, spiritually conditions or calling, you will not respond and you will have any connection whatever so with us. So we cannot, if we don't really pray, even though you pray, if you don't really feel God within you, or parang wala lang, you're just praying with no, with nothing. So you cannot really get the spiritual connection of them to God. You cannot really find the answer. So how much we could be able to really pray more and artistically and really talk to God. What is the relationship between the dual characteristic of internal nature and external form and the dual characteristic of yang and yin? God's original internal nature and original external form each contain the mutual relationship of original yang and original yin. Therefore, original yang and original yin are attributes of original internal nature and original external form. So um, how we could really the original yang and original yin within our the attributes of God within ourselves. For example, in a person, mind, internal nature, and the body is external form. So yang, memory, clarity, pleasure, joy, excitement, and activity, which is in the minus of yin, forgetfulness, ability, displeasure, sadness, calmness, and passivity. Body external form is yang, projection, convexity outer surface, and yin is a hollowness and purity in the inner side. God is a subject in whom the dual characteristic of an original external nature and original external form in harmony. At the same time, God is in the harmonious union of masculinity and femininity, which manifests the qualities of original internal nature and original external form respectively. In the relationship to the universe, God is a subject partner in having the qualities of internal nature and masculinity. In recognition of God's position as the internal and masculine subject partner, we call him Father. Yeah, when that's why as God is a subject, made up with a harmony in between our original essentials. Original essentials character and our original essential form, while at the same time with this in the harmonious subject of characteristic, dual characteristic, our essential character and original essential form with this, and at the same time with the harmonious subject of dual character of our original essential form. of the masculinity and femininity, and God exists in masculine subject position of an internal character to the essential form of masculinity and femininity, and God exists in masculine subject position of internal character to the creation as the feminine object partner. Yeah. So how and but of course in the principle of creation, in the recognitions of God's position as the internal and masculine subject partner, we call him Father. But of course in divine principle, as we learn, yeah, we if you talk about yes, because it's here it's called our Father is like forming us in masculinity. But of course in the principle of creation, yeah, he's not only talking about Father. Uh, there is also as a mother, or like we're talking about as God as our parent. Yeah. So therefore, mm, yeah, God as our parent. The two aspects of God, which is reciprocity, subject and object, give and take actions, God of love, and the number 12 for 21 and 40, order of and God of science. God is the invisible subject partner, and the universe as a whole is a substantial object partner to God. In accordance with the principle of creation, God's dual characteristic manifests himself symbolically or an image is as individual embodiment of truth, which constitute the universe. Since individual embodiments of truth are all substantial object partners to God, resembling his original internal nature and original external form, they each possess within themselves both internal nature and external form, and likewise both young and yin. So yeah, when we are talking about yeah, God really created the human beings. Yeah, this one to really know our the that everything create all things that God created their existence. They have their own purpose, yeah, certain purpose, goal, yeah, and the value of um, each and every one, especially when in terms of yeah, as human beings, what is the value as of a man and a woman? Yeah, actualizing actually to the actualizing to the love of God. Yeah, as we are talking about yeah in the principle of creation. So I think that's all for. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ate Jinky. Let's Pakso, brothers and sisters. Pakso, Yurubud. So that is the last lecture of the dual character. Are there any questions? Time for you to rock and roll. You understand? Nakamute ka, Ate Sylvia.
Wala kuya, nothing
Ano?
to say.
Natin. So, ako pala yung magtatanong.
Lord of the Rings. Ano sa ba ni?
How about from the others? Do you have any in your mind from the lecture to clarify questions? We are talking about dual characteristics.
Wala lang. Para lang ano ko yan. Sige purpose sa dual characteristics.
Okay?
Kung sige purpose sa dual characteristics.
So what is the purpose of dual character?
Mm.
Why do we need to study dual characteristics?
Naman, yan naman.
So anybody can answer? What?
Para lang sa istoryahan.
Don't be shy, feel at home. Ate Jinky, ano purpose ng dual characteristics pala? Si Ate Jinky pala, lecturer na.
Ako nga yung may tanong eh.
Ikaw talaga ate.
What do you think, te? What is the purpose of dual characteristics? Ba't kailangan natin pag-aralan? Bakit nilagay sa divine principle? Yung pinakauna pa talaga.
Dual character. Dual character. I think so that we could so that we could know that God also has an internal, parang ganun ba? Internal sa external form. Yeah, through the creation
How
of
about
God.
those people who don't believe in God?
Those people who don't
Because
believe
you
in
said
God.
that ano yun? To know the characteristics of God, right? But how about those who don't believe in God? So, balik tayo sa question. What is the purpose of studying the dual character? I met when I was in America, I'm doing fundraising nearby McDonald's. I forgot where which part of that, and then I met I met an atheist, and he just said like, "No, I don't believe you. I'm an atheist. Get away, move away." I cannot. I'm speechless. I was speechless that time because I just arrived in America at that time, and then my area is yeah, I remember. So since I just arrived in America, so usually it's in I think in New York or in New Jersey. Yeah, either of the because the New Jersey and New York is really a difficult area, a lot of rejection, unlike the other countryside. So yeah, some people doesn't believe in God. We might say they don't believe in God, and maybe they won't believe in spirit also. So what to do? Yeah, some people doesn't believe in God, but they believe something spiritual. Yeah, but he's not calling it God. Like we really say what uh, who wants to answer? You might encounter this in the future if you like giving lecture. There are especially if you give lecture to those college students, and there are some stubborn students who will try to test you. I don't believe what you're saying. Can you prove to me like that?
Ikulbaan ko sa kong question. Kung ipangutana sa ako.
Yeah, paano nga ba? Anybody can answer? Tatanong din ako, di ko rin alam.
Kaya nga ako nagtanong din kuya, hindi ko alam eh.
Hindi ko rin alam. Just give it a try. What do you think? How? You don't have other choice if you're the only one. Yeah. Just think that you're giving lecture and then you encounter this question all by yourself without
Anybody to help?
Anybody to help? Alam mo, napakasimple lang yung tanong na, pero bakit ang hirap sagutin? Even though you know the principle. Yes. Walang sumasagot. Naku, bagsak sa exam.
Ganon. Diyos ko, Lord.
biglang mag-test.
Biglang
mag-exam. Another question. Maybe just think about it. What is the face of God?
If you're not a believer, you cannot. You might not have be able to
Let's say your audience already believe in God. So now they will ask you, what is the face of God? Based on the principle.
Face of God is actually God is formless. It's just that his characteristics being manifested in every entity that he has created. His characteristics. Winnover for a fact na every symbol and image is a true embodiment of his being. Pero pagka ingong kag face ni God, it should be a perfected human being. But, of course, kung kag face niya specifically, there's no specific face of God because he's formless. Pero yung characteristics niya, makikita niya sa ato sa tanan nga individual embodiment of his truth. Kayang created beings. Pero face, wow, wala niya particular. Unless, of course, we have fully atoned or we have full belief, just like us have believe in the true parents. Then we can say God's face is, we can see God's face in our true parents because we were the first person who have first couple who had perfected that characteristics of his. Nga, kay kung i-present natin niya sa mga tao nga kahabaw wa pa kaila ni true parents, magtragid jud na nga, day mo din ang Ginoo. So, yeah, God is specific.
How about the others? How about ilan lang pala ito? How about Christine?
Bia. And today, face ni God. Ika lang. Today, face ni God. Nah, kuya na din ha. What is God's face daw, pangutana?
Yeah.
Ano to imong gingon, kuya? How do you see it?
Yeah. God.
Halak ka.
Welcome, Bea.
There's Bell. Diba?
No coaching.
Hello po, good evening.
Good evening, Bea.
Happy New Year po sa lahat.
Yes, very happy New Year.
She doesn't sound happy. Hindi. Ano ba yung
First,
Amoy.
first section pa lang, hindi pa natin masagot-sagot yung mga ganun. Para pa tayo mag-proceed sa section 2. Section.
Lord,
What is the face of God? Ano mukha ni God?
Um, uh, God takes after the face of us individuals as his object partners. We, yeah, we are in his image. Therefore, there's no definite image of God or definite image of his face. So, but then it is only when we reach perfection that we can become like a symbol to represent God's face. So yeah. But as long as we're not, God would not have any face. Because I think this is created in a way, it is that created in that way. Because if we think about it, if God were to have a definite, structure of his face or image of his face, then it would have been parang napaka-unfair naman. Kasi people would think na, hala, mas kamukha ko si God, but then ako naman sobrang layo ng mukha ko kay God. So I think this is, God created me in a very unfair manner. So I think, yeah, it is, wala. So when we think about God, as long as hindi pa nakaka-reach, wala pang tao nakaka-reach ng perfection, God would have no faith. God would have no face at all. But then when we reach perfection, or right now, since true parents were victorious and have reached perfection, then when we talk about God, the image that would na makikita natin, that would represent God would be the face of our true parents. I think yun lang po. Di ko sure. Thank you. Happy New Year ulit.
Thank you, Bea. How about Ate Jinky?
May na-remember na ako sa question. Dati kasi ang tanong ko din yan. This is my question also last time. Parang, nung ano ba, especially nung, di ba, si True Father kasi nung nireceive niya si Jesus, sabi niya, di ba kasi dun sa autobiography niya before, appeared. Tapos yung una kong tanong dati nung nabasa ko yung autobiography ni True Father, kung nakita ba talaga ni True Father si Jesus. Parang di ba yung gano'n? Yun yung una kong ano. Pero may naalala ko si ano ba nagsabi sa ako nun, that like, parang, sabi kasi di ba, human beings as the manifestation of God creation. So parang, ang naalala ko lang na sinabi, parang pag ikaw, pag malungkot yung, parang ganun ba? Tama ba yun? I don't know. I'm not really sure about it. Pag if you are happy, masaya din si God. Parang ganun. If you are sad, parang that's depend to the, in how we could, parang ganun yata. Yun yung ano ko lang If you are happy, then masaya din si God. If you are sad, then, yeah. If you are suffering, then God also is, yeah, suffering. Parang ganun. Ganun. That's what, yun lang yung hindi ko masyado.
Pero paano yung sinasabi ni God is a suffering God all throughout from 6,000 years? Paano natin i-justify yun? Kung nakadepende lang siya sa mode natin.
Pwede. Kaya so, sabi nga po ni Bea, wala pang, until we get to perfection. Parang gano'n siguro. Ano ba? Yun lang po yun.
Okay. So, who else? Who wants to answer? About Ate Erin? Are you available? it is not available. How about Ate Lina? Ay, Ate, what is the face of God?
Face of God?
Bakit? Tatanong na ako what is the face of God. Ba't ka tumawa?
Siyempre, para sa akin, ang face of God is yung face ni the true parents. Ni father at saka ni mother. Meron ba dapat? Meron ba dapat
Eh?
ba?
Okay. Wala lang,
Yung,
tinatanong.
yung face ni true father at saka ni true mother. Yun yung face ni God. Diba?
Balik tayo sa unang question. Ano yun? Ano yung
Hello.
question? Yes.
Sorry. Ano dito eh. So, kumubli muna ako. Anong sagot ko? Dun sa what is the face of God, ang naisip ko kasi na description, di ba, is omnipotence and omnipresence. So, yung omnipresence kasi ang intindi ko dun is everywhere available siya kasi nga invisible. So, it can fit in small as in your pocket or anywhere that you can, yung bang state of being widespread or constantly encountered. So, anywhere. So, this means you cannot, para siyang gas. So, na-example ko na yung gas. So, parang gas na hindi mo nakikita pero nararamdaman mo. Or you cannot fit it in, you can fit or you can put it in a place but you cannot have a definite shape or yung ganun. So, parang yung katulad po ng sinabi ni Ate Sylvia kanina na you can see God in all what you can see here on earth, like a mirror. However, as to a definite face that you can describe eyebrows, eyes, nose, mouth, or the face itself, the shape of the face, you cannot describe it. Parang ganun. Tapos dun po sa unang question, ano mga ba yan? Why are we studying yung dual characteristic? So kasi
yes.
di ba
Anong purpose ng dual characteristic? Ano, hindi lang siguro isa. Marami yata.
Wala akong reference na exactly na quote. Pero wala ako. Ito lang po. So, di ba kasi po, in order for us to understand everything around us, we have to understand what is the cause. So, kumbaga, that's the reason why we have to the reason why we have to study the dual characteristics kasi nga in order for us to have diba parang in order for us to have a harmonious relationship with a person or parang doon kasi dinescribe sa atin kung paano nagkakaroon ng nag-spring ang isang bagay, spring of isang bagay with the interaction of two, which is a positive and a negative energy. And it also explains to us yung kung ano yung nakikita natin, may male and female, ganyan po. So, hindi po magkakaroon ng harmony or interaction between something if there is no at least two dual na it's either energy, entity, or ayun po, na magkakaroon ng interaction between para po magkaroon ng harmony or interaction para mabuo ang isang bagay. That's why kailangan maintindihan natin yung dual characteristics in order for us to further understand nga kung bakit may male and female, bakit may positive at negative. San sila, ano yung role nila sa bawat isa. Ganun po.
Alright, thank you so much, Te.
So in short, ang purpose niya is to really have give and take lang talaga. To understand give and take relationship. Yun ba yun, ate?
Ate Silvia, paulit po.
And sabi ko, so in short, dual characteristics is for us to be able to understand give and take relationship.
Apa.
Thank you, ate.
Thank you po.
So, let's go back again. Let's go back again. Ulit. What is the relationship between God and the creation? Object and object, right? Si God may karakter ng creation, may positive and negative. Right? Ang relationship natin, God. God is our parent and we are His children. Kunyari, may anak ako, tapos di nyo nakikita yung anak. Di nyo ako nakita, yung anak nyo lang nakita ko. First time, di nyo pa ako nakita talaga, pero nakita yung anak ko. Anong mukha ko?
Yung anak mo?
Yung anak nyo. Mo. Nyo tuloy.
Yeah, together with my wife.
Yes.
Combination of your wife and you yourself.
Yeah, but yun lang yung sagot ko. si Saran di makasagot yan. Pero based sa ang logic lang kasi is nirelate ko siya sa parent-child relationship. But tapos kasi pag sa dual characteristic kasi malalaman mo si God through the creation. And di ba? Dual characteristic talaga. Talaga pag i-share mo to, dual characteristics yung lecture talaga. So, lahat ng tao may positive and negative. That we cannot say exactly like face na external.
Mm-hmm.
As long as lahat ng bagay may common elements na positive and negative. That's already the like not you're talking about the face of God. I could really say the face of God actually is all creation. All creation is the face of God. Pero bawat isa,
multifaceted si God.
Every entity, pinagkaiba lang, every entity magkaiba, especially human beings sa creation, di ba? Lahat ng tao, image ni God. Every individual embodiment image ni God. Lahat din ng bagay. Symbolic. Kung tutuusin talaga, yung face ni God, invisible. Pero makikita talaga natin si God visible through the creation. Kaya kung magkaroon ng perfection of human beings and then also together with the creation, pag mag-unite, that's the perfect face of
image of God.
Image. You can say the face of God. And ang tao din, hindi kaya kailangan may partner siya, di ba? Kasi pag lalaki lang, yeah, it's not the exact image kasi ang God is one character. Although individual embodiment, pwede. Pero yung perfection ng human being.
It is the union of husband and wife. Yeah.
Yun lang yun. Sir, makasagot din. Pero yun lang yung understanding ko.
Merong ano dito sa crosswalk.com regarding faith. Sabi niya, children have a way of posing simple question that requires a straightforward answer. The question is, what does God look like? Then, sabi niya doon, What does God look like? We might be tempted to answer, sabi niya, I just don't know. Ano ba?
Paita.
Yun daw ang kan. We might be tempted to say, I just don't know if we will be asked with that straightforward question.
That's good. That like look like now.
Tapos sabi niya,
Only God.
and that would a pretty honest response, according to Dr. Michael A. Milton ng crosswalk.com. But the child deserved to know all the full truth. So, actually, yan yung mga question na pag tatanungin mo sa Christianity, sabi nila that's the mystery of God's existence here on earth. Pero kung babasahin mo talaga ang divine principle, whether we like it or not, okay? Sabi nga ni Jesus Christ sa Bible mismo, if you have seen me, you have seen the Father. And sinabi diyan din niya na you must be perfect as your heavenly Father is perfect. So what does that mean? Okay? And we all know that yung sinabi ni Irene, God is omnipresent. So pag sinabi nating omnipresent, sabi nga rin ni Father, di ba? God can be seen in the smallest things that we can see on earth, and also can be seen from the biggest picture that we can see. Pero who are the image of God?
Human beings. Human beings.
Diba? We are created to become substantial embodiment of God's truth in image, either in masculine and feminine. So ano ba yung itsura ni God? So logically speaking, tama yung sabi ni Herwin na kung nakita mo yung anak, kahit hindi mo pa nakita yung magulang o yung tatay, malalaman mo na siya yung tatay. Makikita mo na siya yung tatay. Okay. Pero kung titignan natin sa resultant kasi, it is a combination of two being. Kasi yung DNA ng nanay, DNA ng tatay, it combines. Kaya at the other side, kung titignan mo, first na tingin mo, pwede mong tingin doon, ang tingin mo doon sa anak is yung tatay. Pag titigan mo ulit, pupunta siya into sa side ng nanay. Pero kung titignan mo, isa lang naman yung tinitingnan mo na mukha. Okay? And kung makita mo yung nanay at tatay, hindi mo rin masabi na they are different from each other. So what does that mean? Okay. Knowing the dual characteristics of the whole universe, most centering on human beings who have the internal and external, plus the positive and negative, if that is present in everything that is being created, meaning that is the image of God, because we are created to become the image of God. Diba? Kasi ang inaano kasi natin, ang tinitingnan natin is yung inheritance of God's character, of a perfect unity of both internal and external. That is really impossible to say na that is really impossible to say that I am the image of God, because we are being limited by that definition of the image. Pero kung titignan natin in the real sense of the image, whether we like it or not, okay? Sabi ni God, let us make man in our own image and likeness. That is in the book of Genesis. So therefore, we can say, if you have seen me, you have seen the Father. Either you are man or a woman, because you are possessing the characteristics of dual characteristics of God, internal and external, positive and negative. And even the fundamental characteristics of God, masculine and feminine, it is present in you. Why? because we have what we call the characteristics of feminine and masculine, centering on the DNA characteristics that we have. And that will be manifested on the 46 chromosome na yun yung magiging substantial na image or substantial na personality na meron ka after the union of sperm and egg cell will be completed and joined together and undergo into a tinatawag nating rapid mitotic cell division. Na ang nag-ano doon is kung ano yung pang 46, yun yung magde-determine kung babae o lalaki ka. Kaya the reason why we cannot confidently say that I am the image of God because we are limited by the notion that I don't possess the characteristics of God. Pero in reality, studying the dual characteristics of God, it clearly say that I am the image of God. Whether we are sinful or not sinful, we have inherited the characteristics of God, manifesting the dual characteristics of positive and negative, and the more fundamental characteristics of God, wherein you can see internal and external. Okay? Yan. So, and also that will give us God can be seen in everybody because of God's omnipresence. Okay? So, pag magdalawang isip ka, mag-alangan ka, ang ano sa iyo is you are not really confident on your teaching. Kasi yung question na yon, yung what is the face of God or why do we need to study these characteristics? It will show how much you are really determined to prove that God exists because of the presence of the characteristics that you can see and you can observe in everything that is being created. And that needs your confidence na masabi mo na I am with God and you are with God and we are with God. Ma-remember niyo yung kwan? Ma-remember niyo yung student sa kayong professor argument?
Alin sir? Yung kay Einstein
Yung kay
or
Albert
yung...
Einstein. Yung kay Albert Einstein na yung professor niya na atheist na walang God kasi evil ang environment.
Okay.
Diba? So, ganun din yun. But philosophically speaking, the one that proves that God exists in us and we are the image of God is because of God's omnipresent. Pag sinabi kasi nating omnipresent, He is present in everything. Kaya nga, two things what we can see in the creation. It is created to become the image or a symbol. And kung tatanungin mo anong image ni God, anong mukha ni God, di siyempre kung anong nandun sa image, yun yung magiging mukha ni God. So sino yun? It is you and me. Okay? So does it make sense? Does it give some hint? Pero mas maganda kung basahin nyo rin yung sinabi ni Father na yung God is present in the smallest thing that we can see on earth and it can exist in the biggest picture that we can ever imagine.
Ano lang yan sir yung symbolic. Yung sa last part lang talaga makikita doon. Tingnan mo yung diagram doon. Object yung yung
Nasa
creation.
Chonsong yung God, yung God sa bukuan. Andun yun.
Ito yung marami akong question sa'yo, sir, about this image sa symbol. Even before we started the UPTA.
Naalala ko rin, Kuya Randy, diba, in terms of male and female, even female and male itself has male hormone. Yung sa hormones kasi naalala
Yeah.
ko, di ba, pag female, it has estrogen, yung represent ng ano natin, ng female. Pero meron din siyang progesterone, tsaka meron din siyang testosterone. Pero yung nga, mababa lang. Ganon din sa male.
Mas dominant lang yung kung sa feminine kasi based on biological characteristics, pag feminine, mas dominant yung feminine hormone, and then meron pa rin siyang male hormone, pero
male.
hindi ganun ka-distinct sa female. Unlike sa male, pagka ano naman, hindi mo pwedeng sabihin na wala siyang female hormone. Meron pa rin siyang female
Meron pa
hormone,
din,
pero ano nga lang siya, hindi siya ganun ka-active katulad ng masculine hormone. Kaya nga it is present both pa rin. Kaya kung titingnan mo, even going to the basic characteristics or basic ano tawag nun, identifier of our characteristics na pagdating sa DNA, still it has a masculine and feminine kasi kung titignan mo yung X and Y
Yung
that
X and Y,
represent masculine and feminine in our DNA sequence.
Then sir,
Pero pag sa ano, sir,
how
may
do you
kinalaman ba
explain?
yung hormone sa ano? Sa mga LGBT?
Yun yung ina-enhance nila
ba
eh.
yun? Hormonal ba yun? Parang gano'n. Ano ba yung hormonal? Hindi, pero sabi nga, choice ba nila yun? O, di ba? Parang kasi may sinasabi na nasabi nila pinanganak silang gano'n.
Yung ano, a woman trapped in a man's body, yung mga ganyan.
Yan na lang yung ginawa nilang yan na lang yung ginawa nilang
alibay.
Hindi lang siya alibay, but it is a indoctrination that they have given, justification that they given so that they will say that they are born to be like that. Pero whether we like it or not, it will always go back with the sex determinant na yung sex link na DNA na sinasabi natin na X and Y. Kasi ang determinant naman ng sex ng tao is kung ano yung magiging output ng combination between male egg and male sperm and then female egg, and then once na mag-combine yung two sex link between the haploid cell ng sperm plus haploid cell ng egg, dun magdedetermine whether the zygote will become a male or female. It dependent kung ano yung naging dominant na sa crisscrossing ng DNA. Is it XXY or XY? And that is the 46 sex link na yun nagdedetermine sa sex ng outcome ng union of sperm and egg cell.
How do you explain yung ano nila, sir? Yung feelings nila?
Feeling is different from the sex link because that is the output. Yung feeling kasi pwede mong ano yun eh. Pwede kang mamili ng feeling eh. Like for example, kung meron ka nakitang bata, pwede mong sabihin na hindi ka maawa, pwede ka rin maawa.
So
that is the impulse of the emotion.
Are
Kaya
you
nga
not
controlled ang impulse ng emotion natin eh. It depends on how much we understand our relationship with the things that we are looking.
Are you not agreeing? Are you not agreeing with their emotion when they say that men fell in love with another man?
Yeah.
Emotionally.
That is not really the actual emotion, but that is the choice emotion that they have. Bakit siya choice emotion? Kasi pwedeng dahil nag-grow siya in an environment na either hate niya ang kapwa niya lalaki, tapos or hate niya ang babae, kaya ang naging distinct emotion na i-follow niya is yung masculine, yung gusto niyang magkaroon ng masculine connection.
But why is it that some of the gays are, they said hindi ko to gustong ganitong feeling, but why I said that I have this kind of feeling.
Kaya nga, that is in the state of the mind of understanding who you are.
How about
Yung
we talk
personality
also
mismo.
about spirituality, sir? About kasi it also affects that person. Why is it he has or she has that kind of feeling? Aside sa setting of
Emotion.
aside sa setting of what to think or what to feel to other person. Kasi based on myself, I do believe that we feel somehow a love towards men, but it is your
because we have
choice.
a father.
Yes,
We
that's
have
the
a
point.
connection to a father.
Yes, that's the point. So it's your choice if you make it stronger or not. But some of us cannot, it's hard to control. It is because I think yung papasok tayo sa spirituality na yung ancestors nila maybe ganun.
Actually, that's to one point. Kaya nga doon sa kwan, kung napakinggan niyo yung family tree kasi, ang pinapresent sa family tree na lecture is more on the result.
Yes.
Right? Pero kung titignan natin, kung babasahin niyo other dimension aside from the outcome ng family tree, makikita niyo na it influenced the emotion of the person based on the foundation that was laid, emotional foundation that was laid by the ancestors. Kasi bakit niya hinate is because of nanggaling siya sa relationship na gano'n. No? Nagkaroon siya ng background na gano'n na relationship. Diba? Bakit naging murderer? Bakit napatay niya yung gano'n? It's because of, pwede rin siguro, kasi pwede pa rin naman niya i-control yun eh.
Yeah, it can be changed. Actually, it matters about how the parents will educate that child. Yan ang pinaka-importante.
Aside from that is how much he understand. Kasi kahit hindi siya na-educate ng parents, kung naintindihan niya yung original pattern, nagkaroon siya ng clear understanding through the influence of a person who have a higher form of understanding with the ultimate purpose of the universe. Doon din magkakaroon ng doon din magkakaroon ng control na pwede nating i-control yung sarili natin, and then we can be projected to the right emotion that we have. Isang niyan is katulad natin. Before we join the movement, we have a distinct emotion based on what we have learned from our parents. Pero after joining the movement and learning the principle, what had happened? We were able to control some emotions that is not in accordance to God's purpose and God's plan based on the principle.
It can be changed.
Yeah. Kaya nga ang history hindi it repeats itself. Hindi yung original pattern of history. Because the purpose of history is for us to learn what are the things that we needed to change in the past so that the past will not happen again. Most especially those past that is not good. But those past that is good, yun yung in-nurture natin and develop natin so that we can develop a better future. Anong magandang niyan? Like for example, ang magandang contribution ng science, like for example, is dati ang airplane is just napakasimpleng eroplano lang. Isang tao lang ang kaya niyang capacity. Pero ngayon, ilan ang capacity ng isang eroplano? Ilan na yung pwedeng lumipad sa isang eroplano lang? Pero dati, di ba, iisa lang ang dala niya. So yun yung mga good things na we have to think of for its development. Pero yung mga anong tinanggal doon? Yung mga possible risks during the time of single manned airplane, yun yung binawasan para sa ganun it will not repeat yung mga accident that had happened in the past. Okay? So likewise with us, wala naman tayong difference dun sa mga ganun eh. What had happened in our ancestors in the past, it can be it cannot be, pwede siyang hindi ma-repeat in our time. Pero kinakailangan natin intindihin kung ano yung nangyari in the past and ano naging limitation so that we can overcome those. And once we can overcome it, it will not repeat. And alam natin kung paano siya i-stop through the influence of the principle. Through the influence of God's principle. So yun yung ano nun, yun yung kaya nga kung titingnan natin, 'di ba? Merong kwan ngayon sa ano 'yan? Sa medical field na ang sakit hindi na lang yung germs. Okay? Hindi na lang yung germs ang nagko-cause ng sakit. Kasi ang nagko-cause ng sakit is the imbalance of mRNA and yung mga free radical mRNA that exists in our body, na yun yung nagde-develop into the different either positive or negative, na nagkaroon ng accumulation ng positive or negative sa katawan, and that will result into a imbalance. Okay. Kaya dati, di ba, ang sakit is germs lang sinasabi natin, kaya huwag kang maglaro dyan kasi may germs. Pero ang germs naman nasa katawan talaga natin yun eh. Hindi lang sila active. Na-activate lang pagka merong nagkakaroon ng oversaturation ng germs. Pero ano ba yung nakakabuo ng germs? Pagka nakipag-unite sila sa mga ibang mga free radical mRNA na nagfo-flow sa ating mga cells. Okay. So, kumbaga, kung titignan natin externally, pwede tayo mag-conclude ng mga bagay-bagay. Pero if we will go into the deeper essence of it, most especially yung mga sub-element na meron tayo, doon natin maintindihan talaga yung deeper, magkakaroon tayo ng deeper understanding of what's going on in our physical body. And likewise, if that is what going on in our physical body, ibig sabihin, that's also what is going on into our spiritual body. Because the physical body's action influence the spiritual body. Okay, either maging happy ang spiritual body natin or maging sad ang spiritual body. Kaya kung titingnan niyo sa chapters, sa section 6, doon natin maintindihan talaga what is the influence of the physical body towards the spiritual body that can be seen through our auras. Okay? Yan. Kaya titingnan mo, kahit na maputi yung mga LGBT, talaga makikita mo pa rin yung dark areas within their faces.
Yung mga prostitutes, pag titingnan mo talaga, merong iba yung parang tuyo na tuyo yung nila yung aura nila. Parang
tuyo at saka yung skin din nila is very dry.
Yes, because it reflects their spirituality, dry yung spirit.
Masarap yun.
Natawa si Erwin.
Ano ba klase?
Wala kasi kami ulam na tuyo kanina.
Bakit kasi? Pero actually, yung na-observe ko rin po with them is that nag-iiba rin yung lumalayo sila dun sa spirituality nila. Like, more or less yung mga LGBT na kakilala ko, nag-iiba yung nila, yung understanding nila sa kay God or nagiging atheist dahil nga dun. Do may mga pa rin na iba na nagsisimba pa rin naman, nakikita ko pa rin.
Actually, most of my friends are gay, even high school. And they are really actually mabait sila. And nawa lang ako, kaya nga, why is it that I'm asking, why is it that they have that kind of character, ganun. Tapos inaano sila, di ba? Parang outcast sila sa society. And tapos ako yung naawa sa kanila kasi we have to respect like that. nagkaroon ako ng general na ano din, about LGBT. Good thing that I know the principle. Of course, I do not judge them. I have to change.
Pero mayroon sila actuations kasi actions na ano eh. Yung nag ano ba na magiging ganun yung treatment sa kanila. Kasi iba yung ano nila eh. Iba yung actuations na inaano.
Paano kaya yun? Ang hirap siguro yun ba?
Sabi ng isang LGBT expert na si Cohen, sabi niya is LGBT is a form of mental sickness that needed to be cured and needed to be rehab. Kaya sa Amerika, meron silang rehabilitation for LGBT. And yung author nung si Cohen na yun is he is a blessed by Father 1989, 1985. Something like that. 1980 siya na na-bless with a Korean. Pero in-admit niya na bago siya naging member is a gay talaga siya. Nakikipag-live-in partner siya sa kapwa niya lalaki. Tapos ang ano niya is nung naintindihan niya ang principle, nag-receive siya ng blessing pero habang nagsama sila ng asawa niya, ando doon pa rin yung urge niya na to be with men more than the wife. And he cannot find any place where he can freely talk about it. Kaya ang ginawa niya, yun yung ginawa niyang study sa kanyang masteral. And doon niya na-realize na dahil kahit alam ng asawa niya na meron siya mga engagement sa mga lalaki, still because of the strong commitment ng asawa niya with the blessing and understanding with the principle na sabi nga ng asawa daw niya is, I am the only one who can save my husband. And because of that, doon niya naintindihan na yung rehabilitation niya sa asawa niya with the connection with the wife, doon siya nagkaroon ng deeper understanding of how they can resolve LGBT through a rehabilitation process. Kaya sila mag-asawa ngayon, they are working into that. They already have a rehabilitation in America for gay and lesbian. Meron siyang book, yung Coming Out Straight. If you can search that book.
Nag-aralan namin yan siya.
Kay Connie Gab.
Connie. Interesting talaga.
Connie Gab was my classmate in 40 Days in Chongpyong 1997. 40 Days Chongpyong. Actually, minamatch niya ako sa isang kasama nila sa center dati. Tapos nung nalaman niya na may spouse na ako, sorry siya ng sorry. But we are very close with Connie Gab. Kaya nga nung nandito siya, sabi niya, I'm very grateful to see you here.
Marami din tayong mga members na yung bakla before, gay before. Pero na transform, nagbago naman sila dahil doon sa the understood principle. Kaya nga successful naman yung marriage nila. Wala namang problema.
So, yung iba po, face lang. Parang face lang sa ano nila.
Ang sabi ng parang yung kaklase ni Rhea dun sa UP Los Baños. Siya yung kauna-unahan na gay na nagpa-sex transplant in the Philippines. And siya rin yung naging controversial na gay na yung kinidnap yung asawa niya na lalaki ng kanyang parents. Na-feature siya sa ABS-CBN sa mga major broadcasting natin. Sabi niya, I already have everything, even a successful marriage. Pero sabi niya, still meron pa rin kulang na hindi ko mahanap-hanap. Munti ko sabihin sa kanya na actually ang problema naman talaga hindi ka pwede magkaanak. Kasi that is a one way to prove that you are really a woman. Kasi whether we like it or not, kahit naging sinagot-sagot ni Vice Ganda si Tito Soto sa controversial na ang tanging prove lang na maging babae isang babae is pag nanganak na. Okay? Pero whether nanganak o hindi, basta nandoon yung existence of active mammary gland at saka yung monthly period, that will prove that a woman is a woman. Okay? Pero yung mga sex transplant, wala naman silang monthly period eh.
Period lang.
Period, meron lang silang period pero yung monthly wala sila doon. Kasi spot lang naman lalo pag nagkakasugat. Okay? Meron silang spotting.
Monthly lang walang period.
Kaya minsan meron ako nakausap dati na sabi niya, we are also part of part of the hermaphroditic characteristics of creation of the universe. Sabi sa akin nung bading, sabi ko, nagkakaroon ka ba ng monthly period? Nagdi-discharge ka ba every month? Sabi niya hindi. So how can you say that you are part of it? That is originally twined towards your being as a gay. Kasi meron silang dinadala na they are created nung kinreate si Adam and Eve, kasama sila sa na-create to be gay and lesbian.
Adam and Eve and Steve.
Okay, yun yung inaano nila na Pero kung titignan natin, one characteristics of a female is kung hindi man manganak, at least meron siyang monthly period.
So we can conclude, sir, actually they knew that one. Scientifically, talo talaga sila. Ang follow-up question doon is, bakit hindi nila ma-straight yung sarili nila? Bakit hindi nila ma-straight yung sarili nila? Yun yung question. Kasi, yun nga, scientifically, proven, tested talaga na if you're a woman, we are a woman. Men and men, kahit ano pang baguhin sa buhay mo. So, ang question dun is, paano? Ano pa lang dapat i-change sa sarili nila?
Ang nun is, parang parang kung mula nung bata ka, laging sinasabihan ka ng bad. Tapos pagka meron kang nagawang hindi maganda, you're very bad. Tapos dinidiin pa na ganon. Anong na-instill sa mind? Diba? Lalabas din na you will grow to be like that. And gaya nga ng mga experts sa mga transformation ng mga LGBT, gay and lesbian or LGBT community, lagi nila sinasabi is we should not give an environment for them to develop that personality. Okay. So anong pwede natin gawin doon? Okay. Kung ina-accept na nila yon, mahirapan na tayo. But there must be somebody that is stronger than them to do that. Kaya nga, kung titignan natin, yung mga gay and lesbian na nag-aasawa, pagka nagkaroon sila ng strong connection with their partners, nagbabago. So anong solution nun? It is love from the opposite pa rin. Kasi whether we like it or not, love is stronger than the principle. Di ba? So the solution is still love. Kung gay siya, there must be a woman who will love him, and then mag-create siya ng rehabilitation to transform the partner to become masculine.
Dapat, sir.
Pa-bless pa rin natin sila dapat.
Pa-bless.
Educate ng divine principle, i-rehab natin ang divine principle, tapos ipa-bless natin sila, i-match natin sila, i-bless natin sila, and then continuous guidance, continuous support.
Pa-testimony yung mga before gay members din natin kasi sila lang naman yung makatestify. Hindi ko naman alam yan. Maybe siguro alam ko noonte, pero hindi ko talaga alam ito.
Saka pag na-understand mo deeply talaga yung DP, you have talaga power, strength to overcome yung ganong kasi alam mo na mali yan eh. Hindi lang yan, pati yung other bad habits.
Giging culture na pa naman ng natin.
May mga nakita ka po ako na eventually nag-asawa rin talaga ng opposite. So, kasi 'di ba, nag-college po kasi ako sa exclusive school, so all girls. So may mga barkada ako talaga na nagkaroon sila ng relationship with a woman. Tapos eventually, nag-asawa pa rin sila. So parang dun nakita ko dun na face siya doon. Hindi ko lang alam kung ano yung naging turning point nila, bakit. Kasi during that time college, after college na yung nag-asawa na sila eh. So nalaman ko na lang, tapos nag-asawa na sila ng lalaki. Yung eventually yun nga, straight na. So parang yun.
Yes, go ahead.
Ito.
Ang isang nun is yung actually kung titignan natin is denial and acceptance pa rin naman yun. Denial of your feeling to straighten out yourself, and then acceptance that you wanted to go back to the original pattern of who you are, original personality, and then correct what had happened in the past. Kaya kung titignan mo, pupunta pa rin dun sa issue ng history cannot be repeat itself once you really understand the deep essence of your being. Kaya nga importante na maintindihan talaga yung chapter 1 from the dual characteristics. Kasi kung titingnan natin whether we like it or not, there are only two sex link and sexual orientation that we have. It is only male and female. Yung sinasabi nila na development ng male and female is LGBT, it's not. Kasi you don't need to change your emotion, you don't need to change your personality, but you needed to stand to the ground of who you are as a person and bringing that personality centering on the sexual orientation that you have. So either male or female. Ma-remember mo si Aris, Kuya Julius?
Yes.
Di ba lagi niyang inaano dati na pinupush dati na binabandila pa sa klase natin na natural na na-create siya as a gay. Tapos one time nagkaroon kami ng discussion na sinabi ko, kung hubaran kita, ano bang meron ka? And if we will take a look at the sex-linked chromosome that you have, centering on DNA sequencing sa natin, ano bang lalabas? Sabi niya, ayaw na nga kitang kausapin.
Yun na lang nasabi niya.
Kasi i-justify kasi niya na talagang they were created. Ikaw ba isa ka ba yung sa nakausap niya nun, Kuya? Yung nakadiskusyon niya doon?
Doon tayo sa sa loob ng room. Nakinig lang ako doon.
Pero ang unang kaano niya si Ditz, di ba? Si Ditz ang una niyang kaano nun. Si Ditz sa kasi yung isa.
Si Lucy.
Yun. Yun yung kainitan niya nun eh. So, yun. What we needed, sabi nga ni Cohen, yung author ng Coming Out Straight, is what do we need is to help them to go back to their original true self. Parang ano yan eh. Kung pinagtatakpan mo si Satan at binibigyan mo ng opportunity si Satan to to dominate you, Satan will always dominate you. But if you will expose Satan and then block the opportunity for Satan to dominate you, he cannot dominate you. And the only thing that we can do is to influence them to understand who they are, so that we can really straighten them out. Kaya nga, sabi nga ni Ria nung lagi akong tinatabihan ni Rocky pagka sinusundo ko si Ria noon sa UP Los Baños. Sabi ni Ria noon, alam mo ba na hindi tunay na babae yan? Kasi kung titigan mo talaga, babaeng babae. Mula ulo hanggang paa. Okay?
Pati po boses.
Pati boses. Talagang talagang kung wala nga kung hindi nga niya sasabihin na ano siya, talagang hindi mo makita eh. Flawless, tapos pang Miss Universe. Tapos ang mukha niya talagang, 'di ba? Pagka yung mga ibang mga gay, 'di ba? Yung form ng mukha, kitang-kita mo pa rin, pero siya hindi talaga kasi retokado na lahat eh.
Pati yung ugat sa kamay, mga ganyan.
Yeah, lahat na kasi ano siya hindi siya nag-aayos sa mga local pageant. Nasa international pageant siya. Kaya nga sa kanya is Manila, Japan is parang ano lang parang Cubao Divisoria. Ganun. Kaya sabi niya, I have all the means to what I need. Pero kulang pa rin. Kaya sabi ko sa kanya, actually, the reason why you are like that is you don't want to accept the truth of who you are. And you always wanted to push na kasi gay ako, eto ako, binabae ako. Pero that is a very great lie of who you are. Kaya nga, kung titignan natin, great liar is mga bading at saka mga tomboy. Di ba? Sila yung great deceiver actually. Sad to say, hindi naman sa inaano ko sila, but they always deceive people. Okay?
So, may nakapagkwento ka sa akin, Sir Rodney, na even yung mga nag-change, talaga yung sexual assignment ba yun? Reassignment pala. Even after, may mga nagsisuicide. Kasi nga daw, even after the reassignment, hindi nila makuha yung gusto nila. Yung satisfaction ba? Parang after the reassignment, akala nila once they change their gender, they already achieved yung highest point ng kasayahan. Oo. Pero, yun nga po, may mga situations or may mga tao nga po na after they conduct yung ganong operation, nagpapakamatay daw. Kaya ngayon parang naging requirement na yung psychology exam bago ka mag-reassignment dahil doon.
Yung mga sex change. Pero sa Thailand, di na kailangan yun eh. Kailangan lang ng pera mo.
Para nga lang daw tindahan. Hindi lang parang gano'n.
Mamili ka na doon kung ano.
Dami doon. Nalising ako doon sa amin yan.
Kaso ano yun eh. Irreparable yun. Di mo naman maibabalik yun eh. Yun yung problema doon eh. Kaya siguro sila nagsusuicide. Kasi hindi,
Oo, hindi mo na kasi mababalik eh.
Oo.
Kanina pa nga sa akin, paano gagawin? Hindi ko ma-imagine. Sabi ko, ayoko panoorin yung video. Kinukwento nyo pa lang, ayoko na ma-imagine eh, sabi ko.
Pwede naman yan, transplant ulit.
Ano po?
Transplant ulit. Remove, then transplant with new,
Balik yung dati ko ya.
Balik. Hanap na sponsor.
Pero yung nerve endings, yung mga nerves kasi iba yun, di mo maibabalik yun eh.
Usually namamatay kasi yung mga nerves na actually ang ginagawa nila, unang nilang pinapatay is yung ng active supplementation ng hormones ng testosterone para sa ganun hindi siya
Kaya niya mag-start na sila estrogen, parang ganyan. Kung pababae yung pupunta nila.
Oo. Para ma-dominate yung production at saka ma-maintain nila pa rin nila yung healthy body nila.
Pero external pa rin yung ginagawa nila. Kasi yung in the inside, yun eh. Ganun pa rin yun eh. Kaya nga sila nagko-hormone eh. Para ganun eh. So,
actually, hindi mo naman talaga mababago yun natin kasi kung titignan natin kasi sa structure ng female sexual reproductive organ, hindi lang naman dun sa vagina nagde-determine ng meron dun yung dito pala si Bea, no, pero mature naman na si Bea. So ang structure kasi ng sexual organ ng tao starts lalo sa female, nandoon yung ovary, uterus, tapos yung vagina and yung mga supplementary organ that will give them the hormone to sustain the life and the maintenance of the healthy egg cells sa female. And sa male naman is hindi mo pwede kasi wala kasing although merong spot for uterus ang lalaki pero nandoon kasi yung duct ng yung tawag doon? Yung urethral duct nandoon siya. Kaya ang ginagawa nila is yun yung doon sa urethral duct aside from ihi kasi ang laman nun, meron din mga hormone supplementing bodies na nandoon to support yung masculine characteristics ng tao. And then yun yung sinusuppress. Kaya ang ginagawa nila either parang dine-deactivate nila yon, meron siyang linalagay na deactivation para sa ganun hindi magkaroon ng production ng testosterone. Tapos yun ay kinakailangan nila mag-inject ng estrogen sa ganun to supplement yung maintenance of their health. Pero whether they like it or not, still hindi pa rin kumpleto yung binibigay kasi ang inaano lang naman, ang linalagay lang naman is yung vaginal opening. And when we talk about sexual reproductive organ of a female, hindi lang naman yung vaginal opening ang sexual reproductive organ ng babae. Yan. Kaya nga ngayon ang ginagawa ng mga plastic surgeons is they wanted to recopy the whole female reproductive organ para sa ganon they can transplant the whole system. Pero it takes a lot of study bago pa mangyari yun kasi hindi ganon kadali kasi yung complication. Lalo na pagka di ba ang babae meron yung limit lang ng production ng egg cell. Kung kailan siya magkaroon ng active egg cell saka merong endpoint kung kailan. Depende kung kailan ka nag-start. Dati yun yung calculation na ginagawa namin sa embryology namin ng college. Yung calculation kung kailan mag-menopause ang babae. Halimbawa, nag-start ka na mag-mens at the age of 13 years old. Kung total ng 4,000 egg cell, tapos ang emittance ng egg cell mo is both left and right, alternate yun every 14 days. So kung every 14 days, yung 4,000, ilan ang mailalabas in every year. So doon mo makakalculate kung kailan yung menopausal period mo. And at the same time, kung regular ka, makalculate mo rin kung kailan yung safe period saka yung unsafe period mo. Yan. So, yun yung yun yung ba't nga pala napunta tayo dito, no? Anyway, that's still part of understanding the dual characteristics kasi when we talk about dual characteristics, usually ang tinitingnan lang natin is yung masculine and feminine. Pero when we talk about it goes towards the deeper dual characteristics of human being up to the genetic or yung DNA sequencing na sinasabi.
There's an
sex-linked chromosome.
characteristics, sir. external form.
Yeah.
Yun yung, yun lang kasi pinag-uusapan natin, but there's another set of dual characteristics na kailangan din
Internal sa
i-resolve.
external.
Oo. At saka yung
internal.
deeper
Yung mga
relationship yung behind the scene. Yeah.
Two sets.
Kaya nga yun yung
yun ang i-resolve natin, sir.
Yun yung dapat pag-aralan na mabuti yung paano ba na-form and paano ba nagkakaroon ng personality ang isang human being based on the output na male and female. And saan magsimula yon? Pag nag-meet na kaya nga yung embryology, kung pag-aralan mo ng mabuti, doon mo maintindihan kung paano nagiging babae, nagiging lalaki ng isang tao. Pero minsan ayaw nilang i-discuss yun kasi mas parang sa amin nung sa klase namin, lagi sinasabi after ng theoretical merong experimentation. Kaya sa mga biology student, out of 23 na pumapasok na nagsisimula, ang gagraduate doon na single is depende lang kung gaano ka-strong yung capacity nila to hold their emotion.
Baka mga gay din yung gumraduate, sir.
Hindi naman lahat gay.
Di ba lahat?
Pero marami yung hindi nag-asawa pero meron sila mga partner pa rin na mga lalaki pa rin ang partner na. Sa klase namin dati is 46 kami. Graduate kami na single is ilan ba kami? 10 lang yata kami. Tapos yung 4 na bading na namin, ang ginagawa namin nun is talagang pagka nag-anatomy kami ng nagda-dissection kami ng mga pusa, mga animal yung nagpe-preserve kami. Ang ginagawa, pinapainom talaga namin sila pag naubusan kami ng formalin, pinapabili namin ng gin, tapos pinapalaklak namin isang bote ng gin. Tapos pinapaligawan. Mga kalokohan namin nung college yun.
Akala ko yung papainumin yung idadis. Sorry.
Hindi kasi yung ida-dissect, tutusukan mo yun Tutusukan mo yun sa ulo para tumigas, para freely mo siya na tumitibok pa yung puso.
Naalala ko yung palakang dinisect ko.
Pero nung nasa medicine proper na ako, tinitingnan ko yung difference pag tinanggal mo yung sexual organ ng lalaki at saka babae. Hindi mo na makikita yung difference pagka yung natanggal na yung vagina ng babae tapos natanggal na rin yung penis ng lalaki. Basta dito sa baba. Pero pagka nandun pa rin yung mammary gland, pag tinanggal mo na rin yung mammary gland, kasi yung structure kasi ng ang body natin kasi pagka nawala yung mga yon, yung mammary gland parang naisalpak lang yun dito. Na pwede mo rin siyang tanggalin. Okay? Kaya yun yung nagkakos ng maraming mass pagka nadadali sa mga babae. Kasi pag nadadali kasi, nagpro-produce siya ng milk. Pagka natutuyuan yun yung nagkakaroon ng mga mast cell and then yung bumubukol na Kasi ang nag-activate kasi ng production ng milk sa babae, lalo sa mammary gland, is yung pagka yung nasasagi siya. Kasi yun yung pagka nag-suck kasi yung bata, sinasagi niya yun para sa ganun ma-trigger siya na mag-produce. Kaya ang laging sinasabi ng mga OB is, as much possible, wala siya yung magbibigay ng parang magti-trigger, kaya hindi pwede yung too tight na mga bra at saka mga may mga metal. Yan. Ayan, sa mga babae, education, sa mga protection ng mga kababaihan.
Bawal talaga ang Bawal talaga push up. Ayoko din nun, masakit eh. Ayoko talaga.
Kaya, yan siguro ang cause ng yung breast, di ba?
Breast cancer, yeah.
Sabi kasi nila sa iba, tiis ganda daw.
Ganda te.
Sabi ko, tiis ganda.
Ganda ng gastusin mo in the future pag ganun.
Tiis ganda daw.
Okay, so any more?
10 na.
Oh, 10:24 na. We go beyond ano na. Pero parang gising na gising pa rin kayo. Buhay na buhay pa rin kayo sa discussion.
Ito talaga yung oras na gising ako.
Nag-coffee na ako eh.
So let's go back to the first question.
May assignment na ba, Herwin, para sa Section 2 at saka
Bukas pala. Section 2
bukas.
bukas.
Pero bukas din yung lecture natin o bukas na umaga?
Ako sa mga doctors. Nurse. If you are free, you can join. Pwede ba, sir? Or they can watch na.
Yeah, they can watch online na lang para
Hindi pa ako nakakapanood doon. Pero papanoorin.
Doktor te. So, pero tatin, internal religion.
Okay, sige. Proceed to na? Tapos naman na lahat ng lecture ng section 1, no? Tig-isang pasada.
Ate Irene wala pa. Pero
wala pa siyang lecture ng
Bukas.
Bukas?
Pwede ba siya?
Section 2 na bukas, sir.
Section 2 na tayo bukas kasi January na eh.
May mag-assign tayo sandali.
Section 2 na.
Sinong mauna?
And
di si Irene.
Free pala si Ate Erin bukas. Una na, Ate Erin. Ano next?
So, hindi na ako matutulog nito.
Salbahe. Sorry, Miss Irene.
Ganito yung lambigan sa UPTA, Irene.
Alright, so let me share my screen.
Isa lang ba? Sino susunod?
Iyan na natin. Sige, sinong next kay Ate Irene?
May model lecture pa bukas? Sino mag-model lecture pala bukas?
Sir, si
Manina.
Si Manina. Sige.
Chapter 4, buong chapter 4 din. Ay, 3 pala. Alright, so sinong next kay Ate Irene?
Kanina si Ate Silvia na eh. Yeah! Ate Bel.
Ate Cheribel.
If you will create a PowerPoint, kindly send it to Herwin para we can compile yung mga PowerPoint na because we needed to make a file also na maging copyright ng UPTA later on. Iano natin. Pagka meron kayong gagawin na parang changes, additional na idadagdag, yung PowerPoint, kindly send it to Herwin.
Hindi ko
para
pa ayos
i-compile
yun
natin.
sa akin lahat. Patsi-patsi siya.
Say kahit per kahit per section na tapos kami na mag-compile na.
Okay. Meron ako nung parang section ay yung introduction sa kasi
Send nyo lang sa akin sa sa Gmail. Next, Bea.
Etong matinding kung sino din sa dalawa.
Bea.
Siyempre yung nanay.
Baka dun sa black naman to pupunta pagka i-roll mo pa.
Sir, grabe. Kailan kaya mangyayari yan? Uy, sus, busy ka na.
Wala talaga, no? Laging hindi tumatapat sa
Pero,
black.
mag-1 year na tayo, sir. Wala pang tumatak sa black, sir. Maybe,
Oo nga
you
eh.
never know. Unless it will never end. Alright, so yun.
Yung
Head ko naman sa
science na
GC.
siya. Actually, science.
Section
Pinaka-science.
Yeah.
Science. Pinaka-science.
Ano yan? Energy?
Dual characteristics, give and take action.
Energy.
Ay, dual characteristics.
Pinaka-science.
UPE pa, UPE. Prime energy.
Science din. Dual characteristic science pa
Corruption
rin.
foundation.
Yan yung proof that God exists in every creation.
Hmm.
Yan.
Energy.
Bakit kailangan?
And what make it, ano yung nagpapatunay that the energy of God exists in human being?
God ba talaga yun? Another question.
Kasi nga,
paano malaman si God? Energy, paano mo malaman kung energy ni God?
Yung ba yung pag-uusapan natin bukas?
Yes.
Ano yung proof na nag-exist si God? Ah,
at saan nag-exist si God sa tao? Saan nagre-reside si God? 'Di ba sabi natin nasa heart, nasa ano?
Any Father.
Pero meron.
Sabi ni Father na ano yan, sir, original divine principle.
So kung gusto malaman bukas na lang.
Bukas na lang, mahaba na naman siya.
Alright, let's end this. Prayer na lang yung kulang, so who wants to, or else we will talk continuously. So who wants to volunteer? Next topic.
Bagong taon na, wala pa rin changes.
Walang
nagpapakiramdaman pa rin.
Walang
New
New Year's resolution
na ganun.
Walang New Year's determination within the
Para mas gusto mag-discuss na lang kaysa mag-pray, no?
Alright. So please join me in prayer.
Ayun.
Ako pala nag-open kanina, no? Yan yung New Year's resolution ko. Alright. Our Heavenly Parents and True Parents, yes, we had so much wonderful discussion. It's really good that we were talking about give nourishment in our physical and spiritual body, Father in heaven. Pray to us also, Father in heaven, to search more and study more your words. And we are so thankful for tonight. And I do hope that lighten us, Father in heaven, give us such Father in heaven that we never had before. And so that we could be able to really, Father in heaven, understand, of course, your heart. And through this, we can clearly share also to our brothers and sisters. Maybe somehow they will be inspired as well. Father, thank you for your love, and thank you for this year, the beginning of this year. I hope that we have a wonderful year, Father in heaven, together with you, UPTA members. And today is also somehow the year, Father. For everything, and I offer this prayer in our name. Adieu. Night, and see you tomorrow.
Sa mga hindi pa nag-dinner, you can enjoy your dinner. Sa mga nag-dinner na, you can enjoy your rest. And then see you all tomorrow.
Happy New Year again!
Happy New Year!
Happy New Year!
Bye.
Hanggang hindi matapos yung 1. New Year, Happy New Year.
Isasend na lang namin ni Herwin yung link sa UPTA lecturers, yung link ng bukas live sa YouTube. So para kung sino man yung available na you can watch online, you can watch.
Ulitin ko yung kanina kasi hindi ko napanood. Ay, kamali ako. Nakala ko 7:30 tayo. Pala 7 o'clock. Hindi ko nakapanood yung video.
Kalahati lang yung video kalahati lang na Herwin. Kasi kalahati bago tayo nag-start eh.
Anong video ba yun, sir?
It's more
Dual
on
characteristic.
yung sexual rights agenda ng UN. Discussion about HIV and AIDS prevention. Okay, so see you. Send ko na lang kay Herwin yung video tapos kung isend na lang niya din sa inyo.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you, Kuya.
Bye-bye po.
Good night,
Okay,
everyone.
bye-bye.
See you tomorrow.
Bye.
Rest well.